right, guys, welcome back to Total Disclosure. I am your host. My name's Ty, and I am so happy to be here with you guys tonight. We have a fantastic show lined up for the brunt of you, and we're joined tonight by one of my favorite people, and that is Paradigm Research Group and UFO activist Stephen Bassett. Something happened in the beginning of the month where we were going to have him on to lead off the month. Scheduling conflicts got in the way, my fault. And then here we are today about to have the conversation. So I'm super excited. But before we get into that, guys, I gotta do the housekeeping. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. And if you want to help the support the channel further, become a member because it truly helps and it all goes back into the show. You can also help support the show by using one of our various advertisers, whether it's TubeBuddy and you're a content creator and you want help with SEO and analytics, title suggestions, or any of that stuff that brings your video from to wow. Trust me, sign up for TubeBuddy and use code POP. Also, we're sponsored by Movie Palette. So get your favorite film color graded and sequentially put onto a canvas so that you can bring any man cave together. And it's honestly nice enough where you can put it in the living room and your wife would not know that it was nerdy. So it's a win-win. Nor would the neighbors clinch and look at you funny for having a Captain America poster in your living room. So it's a win-win. Without further ado, guys, let's welcome our resident, our resident. I don't even know what to call you anymore, man.
I don't know, Ty. I mean, I'm just
Part of
that
the
guy.
team, maybe.
Yeah, part of the UFO community at large. Tom Thompson.
And we're excited to have you here as always. Listen, going into this, before we bring Steve in, what is your biggest what is your biggest burning question that you have for a guy who's been not only at the forefront of bringing people together in 2013, right, when he brought everyone together to at the National Press Club. I believe it was 2013. I could be wrong. But a guy like this who's been at the forefront of the truth embargo that the United States government is basically forced upon us. What's your biggest question?
Well, and I think I probably speak for a lot of other people. I really want to hear what he may know about what's going on behind the scenes with witness testimony to these private congressional committees on legacy programs. That's like the most important topic to me personally.
And honestly, it's funny that you say that because most of my or a few of my questions are geared towards that specific language in the NDAA of 2023.
Perfect.
And again, you hit it right on the nail, right on the head. So, I mean, are you ready?
Oh, I'm always ready. Always.
All right. So without further ado, and I don't think he needs necessarily an introduction, but Stephen Bassett, my friend, and I'd like to consider colleague. How are you this fine day?
I'm fine, Tyler. It's a beautiful day here in Los Angeles, and feeling very good about 2023.
Yeah, I think we all are in that sense. I think the tides are changing in a way that is totally unprecedented to anything that we've ever seen before. So, not only, again, did you pave the way, and people like you pave the way for us to get here, but now it's up to us to, take the baton and keep the march going forward. Because, let's face it, a lot of the guys like Greer and yourself and you've done your work, you've earned a seat at the table, and now it's up to us to continue that.
Sounds like you're trying to retire me there for a second.
No, not retire.
I'm not going anywhere.
Not
I'm
retire.
never going to retire, but
No.
I'm happy to pass some batons forward, of course. But still, I'm going to have, I think, the good fortune to be able to stick with this indefinitely. But you brought up an interesting point. I don't know if you've thought about this, but 30% of the American population, and this is actually pretty much true of the entire world. The number is pretty close. 30% of the American population is 30 or under. They were born since 1991. That's 80 million. They were born after the Cold War. So they never spent a minute of their life during what we called the Cold War. Now we're sort of in Cold War II, and so you're getting a little of what that's like, and I'm kind of worried about that. But in general, and so think about that, and then think about Roswell happening now 75 years ago. So they were born about 45 years after Roswell. So they have a whole different viewpoint about the world than the baby boomers. That shouldn't shock anybody. They have a different view about the nuclear threat, and by and large, don't know that much about the history of the ET issue. Why? They take it more for granted. It doesn't bother them as much. They know that things are out there. They've been hearing things, seeing things in the news, and they watch documentaries, and of course, they watch all the sci-fi flicks. So it's not going to be a big deal, frankly, for this 80 million to finally learn we're not alone in the universe. But on the other hand, it's difficult for them to kind of understand what's going on, because what's going on starts 75 years ago. And so one of the things that I'm going to be trying to do with the work that's coming out here shortly, the projects we're about to launch, is to help educate not just the 30 and under, but everybody to what happened. 75 years we were told there's nothing going on. Don't. And now we're about to learn. Oh yeah, there was. And so let's see if we can get up speed on this. Because I know that the 30 and under are going to embrace this big time, and that will help the rest of the people go, okay, we're on board too.
And I think it is going to be that younger generation that's more open-minded and more, and this goes back to something I've been saying for maybe, I don't know, a little bit now is, maybe you can elaborate on this. Do you feel that the population is being groomed to kind of be able to take this information in a more digestible way, or a non-chaotic way?
Not exactly,
because
the word groom is what I'm listening to there. It's more complicated than that. Let me be clear. I believe the American people would have been able to handle the truth about Roswell in 1947 if the government had just said, "Oops, we put that press release out, and well, I guess we're going to have to
live with it."
It would have gone out. It would have gone around the world, but a lot slower than today. And the American people would have been just fine. Mm-hmm. I feel very confident about that, but it's impossible to prove it one way or the other. Right. So when the Cold War ended in 91, I felt the people could easily handle it then. In fact, they always could have handled it, though there were certain times when it was kind of awkward. But after the Cold War ends, was a particularly promising time in our history. Could have handled it then. So they can handle it now? Absolutely. It's not going to be that big a deal. However, it served the truth embargo, which is the government policy of there's no there, that people be told that, or be brought up or mentioned. You probably can't handle that. It's going to be very disruptive. And that just discourages people from engaging it, because good people are thinking, gee, I'd like to get involved with this and maybe help bring the truth out. And then on the other hand, but the people will be so upset. That's propaganda. It was never really true. You will be astounded at how the public reacts to this announcement when it finally comes. And what's more important is that now politicians and journalists are feeling the same way. They're starting to realize, wait a minute, I can talk about this. I can cover this. I can investigate this. People are down with it, right? Most of the skeptics they've gone off somewhere. They're on vacation, and the real debunkers have disappeared altogether. So that's part of what we're seeing now.
And I guess, groom wouldn't have been the word.
No, we're not. Okay. The risk. No, they're not grooming us to be able to deal with this. That's been going on just organically all this time in many, many ways. What you're seeing is something that I wrote about in Liberation Times, and I encourage people to go there, Liberation Times, and see the op-ed I published in, I think it was December 14. By the way, we're trying to get that republished in a couple of major papers.
Ooh, okay.
What you're seeing is that the government is going through a process, an appropriate public-facing process, where they do all the right things and say all the right things and set up all the right organizations, pass all the right legislation, doing everything they should have done in 1992, could have done in 1953, frankly,
Right.
53 after the big Washington sightings. But they're doing it now, and they're going through this process, not because they just learned that, wait a minute, there's a phenomena there that we need to look at. That's the funniest thing I can imagine. They've known about the ET presence since 47 or 45.
Right.
They've known
the
about it.
least.
They've known, not everybody, but the government and those that need to know have known, yeah, there's ETs here, and they have these craft, and they fly around, and they're anti-gravitic. So what they're going through is doing the right things, so that when the hearings in particular, so that they can create the platform on which the president can stand to finally say, look, evidence is pretty clear. We are not alone. And we're going to be telling you more about that. That's the disclosure event, the formal confirmation of it. They're preparing for that, doing the right things so they will look good. But not only look good, they'll minimize the negative reaction from the public. In other words, if you're going to have to go through a difficult thing like that, try to at least minimize the blowback. And I say the millennials are not going to be a problem. The Gen X and the baby boomers are going to be more of a problem, because they've known this lie has been maintained all these years.
And they're going to want the answers, because, and this has been a fear of mine, that, Tom can attest to this. This has been a fear of mine, is that a discover, that they're going to, not only, the next thing to drop will be maybe, back engineering, and they'll find a craft out in the middle of the ocean, and then they'll tell us, oh, this is the first time we've ever found something like this.
That's what I'm worried about.
You
that
know,
they're gonna
No.
retcon history, essentially.
The whole purpose of this process, doing this the right way, so that we can get a formal confirmation from the president and end the truth embargo. So they no longer have to do that.
Right.
Because you see, once you finally confirm there's an extraterrestrial
That's also
presence, the next question that they're going to get, they're probably going to get it in the very first. I don't know if the president will take any questions that night. Maybe they'll have another press conference set up at a separate location, and they'll jump to that where others can answer some questions. I don't know, but they're going to have to hold some press conference really fast. And one of the very first questions they're going to get is, when did you really find out? When did the government know this? I mean, the national security structures. When was this known in the classified world? And the answer is going to be 47. Maybe a little sooner. And then the millennials will go, well, that's fine. No problem. National security. Couldn't tell us. The baby boomers are going to be irritated and go, we've known it all along. Why did you lie? There's a lot of things that might have happened. The world could have gone this way, that way, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, that question is, and they're going to say it was national security. So now once that's done, once it's out there, yes, we're not alone. 2, we delayed this announcement, and we delayed doing the things that you've seen us do the last few years for very important national security reasons. Now we're in the post-disclosure world, where technically they don't have to lie anymore. They can still say, look, we can't give you an answer on that right now. That's still very classified, but we can talk about this. There's plenty that they're going to be able to bring forward once we're on the other side of disclosure, that people will be going, wow, that's fantastic. Others will demand more. So you're going to have a kind of a tug of war that's going to go on between, and the public and the press are going to be on the same side of that rope. And then the government's going to be on the other side. It's going to be this back and forth where the public and the media want as much as they can get as soon as they can get. And the government's going to be wanting to take as long as they can, kind of stretch it out. And you're going to see this play back and forth. But it's no longer going to be a ruse. Everybody will understand. Look, they know they're here. They've got a lot of information. We'd like to have it. When can you tell us? And there's no reason for them to lie about it anymore.
Right.
That's just going to, that would be ridiculous. After you've gotten out of this hole, to try to dig yourself back in one would make no sense.
Well, I think the fear that we have is that they're not going to want to admit that they may have, participated in something criminal. Whether that is to this degree, that degree, or that degree? Are they going to basically, because I've always said no matter what, we're going to have to work with the US government in order to move the ball forward. We're going to have to meet them midway somewhere, somehow. Because if we accuse them of being criminals, like you said, I think you've said this before, if we accuse them of being criminals, they're not going to play ball.
They're not going to play ball.
They're not going to give us
gatekeepers of this information.
You're right. And the fact is, and I'll be very clear, the government's done some criminal things.
Right.
For sure.
We know that.
And
that's unfortunate. The truth embargo and the ET presence is, to my mind, not criminal. I think it was fundamentally national security. Just like they're not going on the internet and explaining and telling us where all of our force assignments are and our nuclear deterrent. They don't do that. There's a full national security justification for this. So it's not criminal. And for that reason, anything that does go there, I try to discourage people, even though they're angry and they're frustrated. I understand that. They want to criminalize the government. They call it a cover-up, right? They talk about whistleblowers. Some of the witnesses view themselves as whistleblowers because some of the witnesses that you're going to see testify do think that the government policy was criminal. Okay,
right.
I'm not gonna throw shade on that, but fundamentally, they are witnesses. They're not whistleblowers. They're not coming to report crimes. They're coming to give very important information to the Congress. And by calling them whistleblowers, you're dissuading others that are thinking they might like to come forward and start talking to their superiors or to members of Congress, not to do it, because most people know the whistleblower path is not an easy path.
Right. Look at Edward Snowden.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk Eric. I mean, he's in Russia.
Right.
Assange is a journalist, but he's not a whistleblower. But we know that there is a whistleblower law, a government whistleblower law that technically covers anybody in that genre. And so when you read the recent NDAA, the big one, the good one, the one that's really important,
right?
The whistleblower is not in there. Witnesses are in there, but not whistleblower. And there's a reason for that. So I discourage the term because it makes it, I think, a little harder for others to come out. Okay. And so, look, the government is doing the right thing. We're winning. And I'm saying, hey, let's not try to snatch, defeat out of the jaws of victory here. Let's go with the flow, but not be too patient. In other words, I'm expecting this to continue at a steady pace. I'm looking for disclosure this year. There's no reason it can't happen even as soon as this summer. And I know enough about what's going on to know that that's very realistic. Now, things can interrupt that. Dramatic events can take place. Disclosure can happen this year. Once you get it out of the way, most of the pressure on the government just evaporates. Now they can actually be direct. In other words, they can say, I can tell you this, but I can't tell you that. And people go, oh, I understand that. Okay. As long as they're not playing games with the truth and they don't try to manipulate us, it's going to be fine. And you may say, well, of course they're going to do that. Not necessarily, because this isn't 1969. This isn't 1991. This is 2023. And the public is sitting is engaging a massive amount of technology in terms of the internet, social media, podcasting, interconnection, and everything else. The government could put out a little statement on Monday, and by the next day, it's been analyzed down to the letter in 4 continents, and you're having people exchanging stuff and coming forward and say, that's baloney, this is not true, here's the source.
Right.
Those days are over. The truth embargo, that it's even hung on this long, is amazing given what has happened in that arena, in the tech arena. The public and the media now have unbelievable power, which they're using and will continue to use in more sophisticated ways to challenge the state in terms of its game playing, propaganda, and what have you. And I'm not saying that that's all going to disappear. I'm simply saying on an issue like this, which is fully nonpartisan, there's no reason to politically put out disinformation or propaganda. It's nonpartisan. It's extremely important. It's global in power, global in importance. There's just to try to play games when you have an issue that it's not like a local thing where you say some nonsense and it doesn't get outside the city. We're talking about you put out something stupid and the entire world is going to analyze it now. literally. And
Literally.
so they want to get out, because right now, if you look at the truth embargo and what's going on, what you're seeing is the truth embargo is being shredded every day, right? It's shredded in the social media. It's shredded in the news media. It's being shredded in podcasts. It's being constantly being ripped at, and it can't hold. Once it's over, they don't have to deal with that anymore. And so for of them to go, okay, what can we pull over their how much wool can we pull over their eyes today? What put out today? No, this is their license to go truth all the time. Now, I'm referring primarily to this issue, which is nonpartisan and global. There are other issues they're going to screw around with. That's not going to change. But this issue is their best chance to go straight up with the American people and the people of the world. I'm talking about all the major nations, and get a whole lot of good press and a lot of kudos and thank yous. And wow, that is fantastic. And that's why I think it's going to hold up pretty well.
I agree. And
I hope so.
I really do. I really hope so. And I think the world like you have said time and time again, that the world is more ready than ever for disclosure. Now, you hinted at a few things in what you just said, that, behind the scenes, you see the wheels turning. Is there anything that you can elaborate on that, doesn't breach anything?
No. Look, I'm not an insider like that. Right. I'm not somebody that's getting those late night phone calls from people, anonymous sources, saying, "Oh, here's what's going on." They don't call me, and I don't think I want them to. There are a lot of people that say they have real inside information of what's going on. Be skeptical. There is enough in the public domain right now to impress anybody that's analyzing the current situation with an open mind. And I'm happy to discuss that. You've got activity on many fronts. First of all, you have a citizen activist movement that has reached a very high level, and it's always been there. I entered in '96. Others have entered in the '80s. There's always been an activist component to this issue, though it's primarily been research, and I like to use UAP research, UAP organizations, sighting analysis, that kind of stuff. But there's always been some activism. Keogh was basically an activist, even all the way back then. But the activism went to another level when the emergence of certain people in this group called the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences in October of 2017. But two people in particular were the key activists, and that was Christopher Mellon and Luis Elizondo. These are the two that were most important to what was coming. And so whatever the overall mission statement was of the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, which is now the To the Stars Academy, kind of a media company. All right. The Mellon and Elizondo had a much more precise and political agenda, which was end the truth embargo. Right. And Luis Elizondo did an enormous amount of public engagement, a huge number of interviews and what have you. While Christopher Mellon, who has tremendous career experience not on Capitol Hill, but over the Department of Defense, he was doing the behind-the-scenes briefing, bringing people to the Hill, talking to members of Congress, having witnesses talk to them. And by say members of Congress, we're talking about the members of certain committees, not all 535. And the committees are armed services, intel, possible Homeland Security, and so forth. These are the committee people or the member of Congress he was talking to. This went on for several years. Right. And all of this briefing, on top of whatever else they knew, or whatever else they might have had access to, is what led to the legislation proposed by Marco Rubio in 2020. So that legislation, which led to the bills in 2021, the first bill in 2021, which was a landmark thing for the UAP issue to be formally put into the Intelligence Authorization Act as part of the national. Believe me, a lot of people, again, the millennials are going, "Oh, doesn't that happen all the time?" Oh, that's
no, yeah.
A lot of people didn't even know what happened.
Yeah, who knew? And I'm going, this is like earth-shaking thing.
Right. And then don't get started on this year's.
But this is the first one, right? Yeah. So that's what started the formal legislation process. And so it was very nonpartisan. You had Rubio, who was a Republican at the time and the chairman of the committee. You had Ruben Gallego got involved. He was a Democrat in the House. And then additional meetings were being held, and eventually Kristen Gillibrand got involved as a senator. She's a Democrat. And then you had Mark Gallagher get involved. Mike Gallagher, he's a Republican, and so forth. That was about 10 members of Congress that are either directly involved in legislation or speaking out. That comes from basically not just everything that's happened prior to 17. Everything has contributed to this.
Right.
But the final process is being driven by Chris Mellon, who did an extraordinary job. And so he gets that going. Now the legislation is underway. So that's, and I can talk as much as you want about that legislation, particularly the last piece, and we'll get to that. Now, meanwhile, even more importantly, the Department of Defense is cooperating. In other words, they could have put a fight up. They could have said, I can't talk to you. Sorry, busy right now.
Right.
We're out to lunch. No. The legislation is in the NDAA bill, and they start doing what it asked them to do. A UAP task force was set over for the ONI and this and that, and a report was delivered, and the process got going. Naturally, the old guard, it was never fast enough. It wasn't enough. I get that. But the process was underway. The wheels were turning.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't buy it. They thought it was bogus. They thought it was just a game. It wasn't. I knew that early on. And so now you have the next bill comes up, and they have they responded to the current legislation before it was passed. In other words, they were already responding to the language in the 2023 NDAA legislation that was put in, and this time by Warner, and of course the legislation in the House bill before the bill passed. And so the stuff was already being set up. When the bill passed, it said set it up.
Right.
And there was some changes, but ultimately it came out to be the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, fine. And when you read the legislation, and I can go there if you want, but it literally shows how they create up this huge cross-agency working group. Now, a lot of people don't know what that is. What is a cross-agency or interagency working group? What it is, and it can involve 100 people, it can involve 1,000 people, 2,000 people.
Right.
What it is they have assigned people in all of these agencies and military services are being assigned. They have jobs. They have their own basic jobs, but they're also being assigned to serve this working group, meaning there's things that you can do there. There's things that we're going to want from you.
Right.
And so in addition to their job, they are part of this working group. That's why it could become 2,000 people. Now, at the center, you're going to have a fundamental office, ARROW, and there may be some full-time staff there and so forth. And a lot of people saying, well, why isn't there more staff? They don't understand the working group, right?
Right. Because you already have, you already have thousands of representatives from agencies like the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, you know, all the three-letter agencies are already representative, and it's kind of like a blockchain, you know, where it's feeding itself. And you
if I can bring the bill up, I'll actually read this, but I don't have it in front of me. I'll get it up shortly. So the DOD is doing their job. All right. So now the media, what's the media doing? Well, the media, let's face it, I've been tracking the media coverage of this issue since 2006. That's why if you go on my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, and you go to resources, and you scroll down to print media archive, and you click on the center link to the main archive, you find 13,000 print articles on this issue in mainstream media, top end, the good stuff, not the fringe. 13,000 represents maybe 25% of the total media coverage of this issue.
So do you have documents in that archive as well, or is it just simply
not documents? You want documents? You go see John Greenwald over at the Black Vault. Yeah. He's got 2 million. No, this is 13,000 print media articles, and like New York Times, Washington Post, all of the major plus, and you know, there's no real what I call fringe. It's all basically mainstream standard journalism. It probably represents 25% of the 60,000 articles that have been written about this issue since 1947.
Okay.
But what's important is that when the To the Stars Academy came out, when they made that announcement, they started paying attention. And then and this is the real icebreaker, when the New York Times runs those 2 articles, first online, second in print, right? In December 17th, 2017, boom, the dam broke. Since then, there have been between 4,000 and 5,000 articles written on this subject. All right.
Wow.
With several thousand of them directly covering the reports, the NDAAs, the congressional action, and so forth. 4,000. So we're seeing an unprecedented amount of coverage, and I'm logging them in. You can go read every single one of them if you want to, and you can barely find a skeptical piece. Maybe one in 100, 150, 200 articles is what I would call a skeptical piece. There have been a few of late.
Right.
So it's 98% just straight news coverage, and they're covering all the right stuff. They're interviewing all the right people. The truth embargo has never faced this kind of coverage.
Never.
And so it's another reason why its days are numbered. But the media is not ready yet to go the next step.
Right.
And maybe they will, maybe they won't. They may not have to, because I think disclosure is going to come whether they take this step or not. But what the media has never done, in what I think is intentional service to the truth embargo, I mean, they sort of knew what they were doing, was that we'll cover it. We'll write this up, we'll write that up. This happened, that happened, this sighting, whatever. But we're not sending out a team of investigators to dig into the truth embargo and find out that, or whatever. We're not going to start going through their the trash cans at the Pentagon, as I like to say.
They're not going to go the extra mile.
Now, they're capable of doing that. Believe me. If they want to go after a story with what we'll call full investigative intent, they will have certain sources that will tell them this or that. And the next thing you know, they're interviewing a person over there, and they get this and they get that. And the next thing you know, they come out with this article, and the DOD wakes up that morning and says, "Oh my God." No, they have never done this. All right. Yeah. Nobody has done this. No, there have been some people, the low end, a little bit of money. They're journalists. They're trying to, see if they can investigate. They have no chance. So that has helped keep the truth embargo going. Now, they're still not doing that, but they're covering it to such an extent that it makes it impossible for anybody I think the Pentagon to raise their hand and say, "You think we can get the truth embargo going for another 10 years? What do you think? 10 years, another good 10? Because I'll retire in 7. Then I won't have to answer any hard questions."
Oh my God. It'd be really interesting to see, so the Boston Globe has something called Spotlight. And they're famous for uncovering the church scandal. And it'd be interesting to see them tackle the truth embargo like they did that with the church. So, and I think that's what you're alluding to, Steve, is
it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
No, I don't think so. The New York Times is the one, frankly, that could have launched an investigation, because they launched those 2 articles in 2017, and they had think about it. Those articles raised like 10 different areas that they could have said, "Whoa, we're digging into that." But the major papers particularly have known for a very long time that the truth embargo is a national security matter of the highest classification and the highest level of significance.
And you can't run it.
They don't want to poke that bear. Meaning, look, there's plenty of other malfeasance going on or whatever you can look into. We'll cover it because the people clearly know something's going on. And now they're really covering it, but they're not going to challenge the government on the truth embargo. And I learned that pretty early. Nevertheless, I've done my share to drive this issue into mainstream press. Hell, there's over nearly 500 articles been written since '97 in mainstream press that mention me or Paradigm Research.
Can I break in here real quick?
Sure.
You know what aggravates me is that, as much as I really do enjoy Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, those are the guys that they always bring on the television shows, and because they push that whole national security threat. They're mainly concerned with the military sightings, and those are the ones that they're pushing, and kind of like that threat narrative. But why aren't you on Tucker Carlson explaining what you're explaining to me here. Like, you're a wealth of knowledge, and Jeremy and George are great, but I think what mainstream media could get a lot out of is bringing someone like you on for a 30-minute segment.
Agreed.
All right, let's parse this. All right, a little bit. Let's deconstruct this. Right, this you've gotten raised some interesting issues here. First of all, the national security aspect of this, which is based around potential threat.
Right.
Okay. In other words, I always suggest people say potential threat. Threat is not germane, and usually that is what they say.
Yeah,
is critical to this process. Don't be upset if people are going on and focusing on that or talking about that, because one, that is what's going to get the attention of members of Congress. That's what's going to get them to take the political risks to hold hearings and speak out and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can't just, you know, if you're telling them, look, the ETs are here and they're here to love us and everything is going to be wonderful. Would you please, you know, we need some legislation so that we can open up a, you know, an embassy and I'll have a, no.
Dandelions don't bring in tax money.
But that doesn't mean that the potential threat isn't viable. It is a viable issue. There's no question. And so the potential threat is the basis upon which the journalists and the members of the DOD, the journalists and the members of Congress can move forward to do what I've been talking about, which is to do what needs to be done, the right thing, set this up. All right. And so it's okay to go there. It's okay to go there. But if you go too hard, if you push it a little too hard, then you're starting to get into an area which is a little gray. But there are other people, there are plenty of people out there that maybe don't have as much exposure as some of the people you're seeing on television right now that are approaching the ET issue from a different point of view. So I have been very clear that I support the process that's unfolding. I support the potential threat issue as a platform and basis to bring in witnesses, to bring in journalists, and of course involve the Congress.
Yeah.
All right. As long as it's what I would call appropriate. In other words, it's easy to get carried away, and you'll see people getting hyper about it and getting into areas which I think are not appropriate. You can't stop that, but I support that. How much do I think are the ETs a actual threat? Probably a lot less than others.
Yes.
I view them as minimally a threat. However, I do view them as problematic. Okay. There's a little difference between problematic and a threat.
Okay.
So,
I'd be interested to know.
When you want to, if you want, and we're not going to go there in the hearings, and we're not going to probably go there at all until, in terms of formally until post-disclosure.
Yeah, post-disclosure.
Once you get into the contact thing, you're into a very problematic area, aren't you?
They're saving that for
Clearly
last.
problematic.
Now,
Yes?
why?
They're saving the contact aspect of this for last, I would imagine. They're at least pushing it far down the road.
It's not, I don't know if they're saving it. You just can't go there. From the standpoint of what needs to be done to get the disclosure, contact is not a road you can travel.
No,
and that's not. I have been talking about contact through most of my career. I don't pretend it doesn't exist. But if you listen to my lectures and you listen to my interviews, you will find that I'm not putting that out in front as the point of the spear on the political process.
Because you can't. It cannot
it
be.
It won't work. It's
abductions will not spearhead this.
No,
this
it's not going to work.
Topic.
So what you do is you focus on what is appropriate for the process by mentioning and commenting on the contact issue, so that the contactees and others that are very much into this know that you haven't forgotten about it.
Right.
That this is still going to come. All right. So, but again, the point I'm making is that is a very problematic area that is going to be interesting to engage post-disclosure, and it will be engaged post-disclosure. All right. So you've got that. Nuclear weapons tampering, kind of problematic, but is it threatening? All right. It is technically a potential threat without question. It is definitely problematic, right? Meaning that you're going to have to talk about that. You're going to have to address that, and you're going to have to somehow come up with some comment to the public about what you think about it, what you knew about it, and so forth. And I put that in the problematic basket. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if they were hovering over nuclear facilities and melting the missiles down into a giant, pile of
Right.
molten metal, that would be more threatening.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
So,
Yeah.
would be.
so these are
But
these
they're
are not
not.
distinctions without a difference.
But they're not. They're sending a message like, hey, you can build them, you can point them, but just so you know, we have full control if need be. And
Maybe. What they're
Yeah.
definitely saying is they're not a threat to us. Okay. You can't
right,
threaten them.
right,
No
right,
problem.
Like these won't work on us.
Yeah, not going to work. Assume we want to let them launch them, and if they did, you couldn't catch us anyway. So,
right.
okay, so put that aside, and I think that's a very important message, right? In other words, because one of the ways the truth embargo has been maintained is, I think, inside, because you see, the truth embargo has two essential parts. You've got the public truth embargo. And then you got a whole different set of parameters that are driving the inside truth embargo. In other words, you need to embargo the truth and the engagement of the issue in the public arena, but you also need to minimize and somewhat embargo the engagement of the issue inside the government itself, within the agencies, within the services. In other words, keep your place. Two different processes, two different approaches, and so the idea that the ETs have got to be, we have to defend ourselves. We've got to do what we have to do. Keep it secret. Work on some tech, whatever it's going to take to somehow defend ourselves against them. Makes it a little easier to keep the people in line inside. Meaning, look, we may have to go to war with these puppies one day, and so you need to keep your mouth shut and no documents go out the door and blah, yada, yada.
Right.
But what if people started to realize that we can't defeat them? There cannot be a war with them. So if you want to spend $2 trillion preparing for a war with the ETs, you might as well just burn the money, because it's not going to work. It would make it a little harder. So now we're having to sort of overcome that. And the nuclear witnesses, who I believe will be the first to testify, in fact, Robert Salas, the lead one, the most important one, announced about a month ago he's been contacted to be interviewed by Arrow. I don't know if your listeners know that.
Yeah, and the guest that we just had on, Mario Woods, he has also been contacted as the first wave. He also made that announcement on Somewhere in the Skies.
Who made the announcement?
Mario Woods.
Oh, okay. Also, Ryan Graves has indicated I think he's been contacted.
Yes,
and there's others that have been contacted. So again, when those witnesses testify, and I think the nuke witnesses may be front and center.
Absolutely.
One of the very first things going to happen is that very sincere questions are going to be asked by members. I think the first is going to be the Senate Intel Committee. Is Captain, you were there? When the missiles were turned off? You were there when you got the calls from the crew as they were incredibly upset and excited because there was this craft hovering over them? What do you take from that?
I can't wait.
Do you see that as a threat? And most of the witnesses that I'm aware of, their response is going to be, no, I do not.
I know.
I see it as a message.
And that's what I love about Robert Salas, especially because when he delivers, because his testimony has been pretty, it's the same every time I hear it. And when he drops that final line, what do you think they were saying? What do you think this is? And he goes, disable the nuclear weapons and throw them away. When he says that to Congress, that is going to be such a powerful moment.
They're not a threat to us. They are only a threat to you. You might want to consider getting rid of these puppies because you might use them someday. All right. And remember, they didn't turn them off once. They did it several times.
Yep.
And at least once in the U.S., I believe, I'm prepared to stand corrected, and once in the Soviet Union, of which I'm fairly strongly about.
Yes.
They did something more aggressive. And I think this happened after they'd done a number of turnoffs. And this was when they turned them on, or they started the launch sequence. And That's pretty scary. In other
Yeah.
words, you had a launch sequence underway that the crew at the time could not stop. In other words, the Bob Salas, whoever was in charge at that point, could not stop it. And so you got these people in this silo watching the missiles move toward launch, and they can't stop it. I would ask somebody to take a few minutes and try to imagine they're in that position. They're in that silo. That's what's going on.
Okay. You're literally about to start World War III inadvertently.
Right.
Launching a missile that you have no control over.
That's right.
And that moment, I mean, if your heart doesn't burst out of your chest, then you are simply not human.
Gets right to the last second, and it stops. It gets the second stops. Now,
right.
Once I think it's once in the Soviet Union, once in the U.S. Now that's another message. I think that's the other message is you didn't get the first message. We've been trying to hint here, and yet you're still building these things, and you're building bigger ones and better ones, and so forth. Let's send this message. Now they've not gone past that. All right, that's where it stands right now. But the point I'm trying to make is, things in the very first day of testimony. If it goes the way I expect, and you've got maybe between 4 and 6 or 8, and there's at least that many easily that could be there, the nuclear weapons tampering witnesses of various types, including Robert Jacobs, the one that saw the missile dummy warhead knocked off.
Oh my, yeah,
that's a wild story.
Kind of cruising around.
Is he still alive?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he is.
Retired but alive.
Okay.
When understand now, Bob Salas and these gentlemen have been telling the world this for 25 years. They've given interviews. Robert Hastings, of course, interviewed 200 people, wrote the book UFOs and Nukes. Then they made a documentary out of it. Then they gave in 2010 a press conference. They did another press conference in 2019. They have spent, and they're getting older and older, and some of them are passing. They have spent at least the last 20 years trying to tell us the exact message, which very shortly they're going to be telling in front of the Senate Intel Committee with millions, if not tens of millions of people watching. It's taken that long. But the point I want to make is think about it for a second. For 20 years, hey, wait a minute. Let me just hang on a second.
Yeah, pull it up.
You want to see something? You know what this is?
I would love to see it.
I have a bunch of these. This is a set of the affidavits that these witnesses drew up and signed and delivered at the press conference in 2010, 13 years ago, right? They then gave them again in the press conference in 2020, I think it was 21, right?
Is there any way that I could get a copy of that?
Sure. They may even be online. I'm not sure, but I will, maybe I'll put them online. I don't know, but I'm going to be whatever. I have a set. But the point I'm trying to make is these affidavits are eventually going to be presented to the United States Congress formally. Now, it's possible that they've already gotten them in briefing. If they have, great. If they haven't, maybe Bob and them will take them up when they go for the private initial the pre-hearing briefings. This is what's going on now. In other words, you do not simply invite people to the Hill, sit them down and say, what do you got? You interview them. Probably the Defense Department interviews them. Then some of the Congress staff interviews them, and they get a sense of what they're going to say, not to coerce or direct, but what are you going to say? Okay, that's interesting, and thus they know the kinds of questions to ask. They know what to expect, and that's perfectly appropriate. Now, some people think it should be more freelance. No.
No, I don't think that's the case.
But once they sit down, they can say whatever they want, and they can be asked whatever the member of Congress wants to ask them. And the only thing that happens after that is you'll get one of two things. They will answer truthfully. Nobody's going to go up there and lie. I assure you, not going to happen. They will answer truthfully, or they will say, sir, ma'am, I can discuss that only in classified setting.
Classified briefing, yeah.
Not talk about that on camera. No problem. Yep. That's it. But they can ask any question. And so these affidavits are going to be submitted. They're going to be put in the public record. They're going to be advertised all over the world. All right. And
maybe
that is a sense now of where we are. And again, if you know the history of this issue, to realize what's coming, you understand this is it. We're in the final weeks and months of this embargo. There's no way that it can sustain what the impact of those hearings is going to have.
You're very confident of that at this point.
Unless they don't bring those guys up and they bring up some other people I've never heard of and they start spinning nonsense tales. But again, you see, the whole process now is driving itself.
But I also think this is where Chris Mellon comes into play, and Lou Elizondo, where they're also, they're meeting with Congress or committees from Congress, and though they're relaying the information, they're telling them, most likely who to call in, right? They're
Sure.
not just they're not just watching the Netflix documentary and
No.
pulling from that list. No, they're
Well, it gets
asking
better
the right
than that.
people.
It gets better than that. Look, the current NDAA bill has, and I can read it to you if you like, it has a section in which it makes it clear that anybody within government, any agency, any service who comes forward with information appropriately to their superior or to a member of Congress, right, that is not classified and not violating an NDA, or at least is coming forward that doesn't violate the law, which they've actually indicated what that was, are given any problems, any pushback, any retribution of any kind, that is not going to happen. There's going to be consequences to their boss or to whoever does that. And so the message they just sent out in the bill that was passed is if you have something, if you're another Ryan Graves or a Dietrich or a Fravor or a nuclear weapons tampering witness, and you want to speak with Congress or you want to speak with whoever is appropriate, you are protected in that sense. All right. Now, some people call that whistleblower language. I call it witness protection language. All right. But mostly, and remember, it's not about going to the media. It's not about going to the general public. It's about coming within the chains of command, within the appropriate government process. All right. They're doing that in order to encourage people to come forward. They're literally saying, we would like you to come forward. Go talk to your boss. If you're a pilot and you saw Tic Tac back in 1991, whatever, go to your boss, tell them you saw that. We want you to come forward, because you can't have a very important witness available to you to testify if you don't even know who they are, if they haven't come forward yet. Right. So they're actually encouraging this process. Meanwhile, right, when they do start engaging the issue as they have, such as contacting Bob Salas, he then goes on and says, yeah, I've been asked to come in and interview. So you see, this process is now moving forward organically. It's beyond manipulation at this point, right? So the idea at the last minute, you can put some cockamamie hearing together like they did in 68 and 69. It wasn't cockamamie, but it was just a limited couple of people. Get it over. You're done. Nothing to see anymore. That's over. Right? There is a massive process coming forward on multiple fronts, which cannot be stopped. And if you examine it without bias, it seems to be a truth process leading to disclosure and thus opening up most of the other doors we need to know about. And that's why my confidence level is high this year.
Wow.
And that's amazing to hear you say that, because, I don't know. I don't know how many times you've said it in an interview to date now, but this is something I've never heard you say before.
This is a huge deal. Let me drive it home. I'm gonna hit the nail with a really big hammer here. Are you ready? Okay, you ready? I'm gonna try to slow down. All right. This is the language that was just passed. Is now the law of the land. It's in HR 7776. FY 2023 National Defense Authorization Act. All right. This language was put in the Senate bill by Mark Warner, the current chairman. In other words, he was the sponsor. His staff put it together, but I'm sure he reviewed every word. Okay. And he's still the chairman of the Senate Intel Committee and will be when the hearings take place, though it's jointly held with Mark Rubio. In other words, they tend to operate pretty much as co-chairs in that particular committee. Right. Section B, I don't know, it's B under whatever. And again, you can find this bill online. Just Google up HR 7776 and hit the text, and you can read the whole thing. But there's like 20 pages of stuff on the UAP. protection for individuals making authorized disclosures. Now, in the previous section, they explained what an authorized disclosure was, all right? One that's not violating this law, that law, violating security clearance, so forth, okay? And there's plenty of those that can be made. It's not as if there isn't plenty of that, all right? Authorized disclosures. Shall not, anybody doing that, shall not be subject to a authorized disclosures. Name, that's the name of the section. Okay. An authorized disclosure shall not be subject to a non-disclosure agreement entered into by the individual who makes the disclosure, shall be deemed to comply with any regulations or order issued under the authority of the Executive Order 13526, 50 U.S.C. 3161, relating to classified national security information, or Chapter 8 of the Atomic Energy Act. Okay? It is not a violation of Section 798 of Title 18 United States Code or other provisions of law relating to the disclosure of information. Okay. In other words, that is what an authorized disclosure is. It doesn't violate those things.
Right.
And if it is an authorized disclosure, that brings us to Section 2. That was
Section 2. Yeah.
Prohibition of reprisals. Protection. An employee of the Department of Energy, of a department or agency of the federal government, or of a contractor. This is very important. This means there's also covering all the people working in civil defense.
Yep.
The defense contracting.
That's big time.
Like Lockheed and those guys.
Okay. Or of a contractor, subcontractor, grantee, subgrantee, or personal services contractor of such a department or agency. It's everybody. All right. Who has authority to take, direct others to take, recommend, or approve any personnel action, shall not, with respect to such authority, take or fail to take, or threaten to take, or fail to take a personnel action, including the revocation or suspension of security clearances or termination of employment with respect to any individual as a reprisal for any authorized disclosure. And the reason I read this is that you can see the language in bills are very hard to understand. And the reason is, there is probably some people that have already translated this, and that's fine. And I could do it. But I think people need to hear the language.
They do.
Legislation language, because it has to be very careful and precise to say exactly what it's supposed to say and include exactly what it's supposed to include.
Right.
But when you read it about 6 times, it starts to really, it starts to come together for you. They just said that, hey, if you can do an authorized disclosure, go for it. Anybody gives you trouble, they're going to deal with us. Okay.
Right.
They're going to deal with the Congress. This is huge. But let me just put a cherry on top of that sundae. All right. You ready for this? Warner was prepared to authorize another section. It was in the Senate bill. And it wouldn't have been in the Senate version of this bill prior to reconciliation if Warner didn't want it there. And that's important to think about. In other words, he was prepared to see this section go through reconciliation and be signed by the president. I am not shocked that it didn't make it. Okay, I get it.
Right.
I understand. But the very fact that he put it there sent a message, because you see the Senate bill and the House versions are all publicized. They were out there for months. So there are people all over government reading them. And so they're reading, this is the Senate bill. Oh, wow. And so what was in that bill mattered, whether it got passed or not.
Right.
This is the section that he wanted in. This would have been, I just read you section 1, section 2 under that particular item. Here, this would have been section 3, titled Private Right of Action. In a case in which an employee described in paragraph 2, which I just read you, takes a personnel action against an individual in violation of such paragraph, the individual may bring a private civil action for all appropriate remedies, including injunctive relief and compensatory and punitive damages against the government or other employer, remember subcontractors, okay, who took personnel action in a federal district court and do that in a federal district court of competent jurisdiction. What was Senator Warner doing here? He was telling everybody in the government that if I have my way and you're a pilot and they take away your flight privileges, or they suddenly get, move your office into the broom closet or whatever the hell they
sue
do,
them theoretically.
you can sue them for money, right?
Compensatory.
They don't want to pay that,
right? And let me tell you, if you know much about government, the government goes to great lengths to prevent you from suing anybody, right? I mean,
yes,
and that includes the Congress and everything else. This was so astounding when I read it. I had to say, wait a minute, this is a joke. Somebody has stuck this in. It's like that employee that put the little saucer in the
right.
Aero division, division. I think it was the NIM, whatever.
It was the patch. Yeah,
I have the patch.
The ODNI patch.
Hold on to that, my Tom. That's going to be worth gazillions of dollars. So this gives you an idea of where we're at now. We are in a totally different place. All right. And so, again, I think I've made my point there. It didn't make it through reconciliation. Somebody said, I don't think so. And they pulled it out, but that's all right. That's okay. The message
doesn't mean it won't be there in the future.
Progress is made.
Who knows? I'm hoping it won't have to be there because nobody's going to be stupid enough to do that.
Right. And I have a quick question for you. Do you think that we could see a day where someone like Bob Lazar gets called to testify in front of Congress?
Look, I'm not someone that could. I can't see the future on that. Anything is possible. There are the way that these hearings work is that, look, you are trying to bring in the absolute most qualified people with the best resumes,
right,
who can address an issue and answer any question. Yeah. That is first and foremost, right? And if you have a specific goal that you're trying to get, absolutely, that's what you do. And once you get disclosure, and the doors start opening, and we're in the post-disclosure world, there's going to be lots of other hearings. Trust me. There's going to be hearings going on for all of the rest of 23 into 24. God knows there's so many. Everybody's want to have a committee hearing on it because everybody wants to be on the stage. But whatever. Right. And so it's possible that at some point a committee will hold a hearing in which they offer some people like Bob to come in who have far more complicated stories that are interesting and may address some more obscure aspects of the truth embargo, because the truth embargo does have this huge history, which is legitimately going to be the subject of hearings. It's also going to be the subject of God knows how many documentaries. Okay. I would like to put my hat in the ring on that.
Yeah, same as me.
So I could see that happening.
Because, I bring it up because you talk in that section 3, we talk about retribution and if anybody has had their life turned upside down, it's Bob Lazar, and whether he's telling the truth or not remains to be seen. But I think it would be really powerful if he did speak in front of Congress. It would at least signal to me that he's willing to put his story up into the limelight and front and center, and in a setting like that would speak volumes.
Look, if that language had gone in as is, though, I don't think it's retroactive. I think it would be
no retro.
Right. Yeah.
Now the issue of retribution's retroactive is going to come up, I assure you, and there will probably be some hearings about that. Okay, but these are not hearings you expect to have or will have. As we deal with the fundamental issue, are we going to get over this truth embargo? Or are we going to finally confirm the ET presence? Or non-sentient presence, right, with high technology that apparently have no ancestors, that were born here, whatever you want to call them. That's a whole nother set of hearings. And you will have people coming in who have grievances. And if the government is smart, they will give them their time and they will hear them, and they will maybe interview them privately, and we'll look at that. Now, let me, I think people will probably find this interesting, but let me make it clear. This is a speculation on my part to make a point, right? I have no idea if this could unfold, but it is a good example of what could happen, because there are some very serious, huge implications to the truth embargo and what was held back and so forth, and what it meant and the implications it had. And I've said this before, and here's the point I'm making. If in fact, and I don't know, I think I'm going to do this, but I think I'll do it on this podcast. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. Look, if in fact the government was able to re-engineer the basic anti-gravitic tech that they had exposure to with crash vehicles, which we know they have, and simply watching the damn things fly. I mean, clearly, once you know something is possible, it makes it a lot easier for the scientists to dig in and come up with the answers. But let's say that back in the 60s, perhaps, or 70s, they had anti-gravitic craft, and there is evidence for that. It's not like a wild speculation. The truth embargo meant that the chemical rocket tech continued. Okay, we're not going to replace it with anti-gravitics, because to do that would end the truth embargo. In other words, you're not going to come out with anti-gravitic. Hey, wait, we got anti-gravitics now, so let's get rid of these, and let's go to space that way. Let's don't use.
But that's criminal.
Again. Wait a minute. It's not criminal, because the truth embargo is a national security matter, and there's a whole lot of things under that rubric that if you say, oh, if you told us this or told us that, no. It's like there are missile launch facilities near cities and stuff. Okay. And one could say, well, then why didn't you build them further out? Let's don't go there. Let's just say that if they had anti-gravitic tech, they could not have brought that public to use in the space program, for instance, without almost certainly ending the truth embargo, which they weren't prepared to do. And by the way, I'm talking back during the Cold War. I'm talking back in the 60s, okay, when the nuclear stockpiles were 20, 30, 40,000, and the end of the world was just one launch away. And so they couldn't do it. But the consequence is that the space program had to run on non-anti-gravitic technology, those big rockets. And we lost 14 astronauts, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Have that kind of technology. And so if in fact that comes out, it will not come out pre-disclosure. It's not going to come out in the leading hearings. Post-disclosure, we may find, and it's one of those problematic areas, we may find that, yes, they had anti-gravitics in the 60s, early 70s. And then the next question from the press is going to be, what about those astronauts? So you see what I mean about there's going to have to be some discussion about the impact of this policy of non-disclosure.
Right.
And the way I like to put it is this: if I'm the government and I knew that disclosure was going to happen, maybe in 3 weeks or something, you knew the hearing, or the hearings were happening, and you know that the president's getting ready, I'd be sending some people to visit every single family of every single one of those 14 astronauts. Right. And I'd come in and sit down and in front of them and say, look, you're going to learn some things soon that will be very upsetting. And we want you to know that we understand that. And we will compensate. We will compensate you. We will compensate your family. But you're going to learn possibly that your loved ones did not have to go up on that big ass rocket.
Right.
We had tech that would have put them up there differently, but we could not bring that tech out for national security reasons. And the number of people in the 20th century that have died because for national security reasons is a very large number. Let's
astronomical.
Get carried away here, right? 14 astronauts is nothing compared to the number that have died for national security reasons. This is a trade-off that the public is willing to make in order to
look the other way on.
Okay, but given the public relations aspect and so forth, I would go and meet with them ahead of time. Now, again, I hope this doesn't get to their ears and bothers them, but it's common sense. I mean, it's not like you have to be a genius to figure this out. But it's also possible that they did not have it done well enough. In other words, it wasn't right enough to use. And if they say that, fine. Okay, I get it. But that is just one of many, many, many areas where once the media and historians and everything go granular on the truth embargo, and I assure you, there's plenty there to go granular on. Things are going to come out like, oh my God, what about this and what about that? And
what about that? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's going to be
it's going to be the domino that ticks everything else over,
Everything.
and it's that domino that it's currently it's weebling and wobbling in the way you describe it. It's literally just about to fall over.
And there's one domino that I hope doesn't exist. Again, I mean, it would be great if it did exist, but I hope it doesn't. It's a big domino, and it's this one. And this will be a press conference that I would not want to have to be leading, right? Post disclosure. If they were able to understand, if they were able to garnish from crash vehicles a major energy tech breakthrough, an extraordinary paradigm shift breakthrough,
life changing,
where you can generate energy for a fraction of the cost, fraction of the impact on the environment, and so forth. And they had to keep that sequestered as well, because there was no way they could kind of leak it out or whatever without it drawing a huge amount of attention and threaten the truth embargo. That is going to be brutal, because withholding a paradigm shift in tech that profound for any length of time, certainly not 10, 20, 30, 40 years, history will be it will be savage. It's going to be a savage thing, and it's going to be unbelievable blowback, anger, and whatever else. I hope that's not a domino this year.
You wouldn't put anti-gravity in that bucket of paradigm shifting.
And anti-gravity is a paradigm shift, and it would make a lot of things possible and easy.
Bigger,
okay, in a lot of ways, right? I give presentations where I list the things that you could do if you had anti-gravity. It'd be sort of cool. An energy breakthrough of that would have affected the lives of every single human being on the
planet.
Right.
Whereas anti-gravity would not have.
Of lives. It would have saved trillions of dollars in cost, and on and on. You could go on and on.
The oil industry gone.
It would be roughly the equivalent of the government discovering an absolute cure for all cancer, say in 1968.
That's right.
And making a decision internally that it was a threat to the national security because it would allow the population to explode and everybody would live longer, Social Security would collapse, and all of this. And they said, for national security reasons, we're going to sequester that cure. It's almost that bad. I don't think they've done that, but that makes my point, I think, even stronger. You know what I mean?
It frightens me that, we can just label it a national security issue, and then the information can be sequestered. Now, whether or not the intention is good or not, with the UFO truth embargo remains to be seen. What are the actual threats? How much does the military and the government know that we don't? So, I mean, that whole guise of slapping and, it's a national security issue, end of story. It doesn't sit well.
It seems too easy.
Yeah, it's they're talking about that now. The default positions classify everything. They classify trillions of hundreds of millions of documents. They can't even keep track of them all. It's crazy. Yeah, no, we have to have at some point a complete rethink of what national security is for the United States. Even given what's going on in China and the Soviet Union, I think we could still deal with those concerns and not have this grotesque national security structure the way that we have it now. But when that's going to happen, I don't know. Frankly, let me put it this way. It's definitely not going to happen pre-disclosure. There's a whole lot of things that are not going to happen pre-disclosure. Post-disclosure, there's a lot of things that suddenly could happen. It's why I devote my life to this. All right. But these discussions we're having right now, you're starting getting into the rich complexity that exists really with respect to the truth embargo, with respect to what happens if you have disclosure and so forth. One of the reasons I'm sitting in this office right now in Los Angeles is because a major project is coming together that will be announced in a few weeks. First will come the announcement, and then 3 or 4 weeks after that, it will go live. It's a big deal. It's 2 years in the making. And I look forward to coming back on your show after the initial announcement is out and talk about it.
I can't wait.
And ultimately, if I'm going to break it down into a few words, there's been
any preview.
There's been some success in bringing together the kinds of resources and production abilities to tell these stories. I mean, not just to go and look and inform the world about these much more complex aspects, including the entire history of the truth embargo, and take it at a level that's top of the line. That's coming. And there's many reasons for that. I'm just fortunate that I was able to help make that happen.
So
awesome.
without getting too into it, because I know you can't. I mean, is this a documentary or? Yeah, maybe you can't even answer that. That's okay. That's okay.
It's media.
It's media of some form.
I can say this: it's not another sci-fi flick,
okay,
or series or anything like that.
No,
it has nothing to do with fiction.
Okay, and again, I would love to have you back after it premieres, and whatever it is, if it is something that there's a screener for that could be worked on, I would love to be able to get the word out on the project as well. And
let me go further. Look, in the run up to the announcement itself, I'm starting a social media campaign.
Okay.
I had never really gone this far before because I didn't have the basis, really. I didn't have the reason, but now I do. And so, first of all, I invite everyone out there to please follow Paradigm Research Group on Twitter.
Yes.
Right? Twitter, whatever you think of it, it's incredibly powerful, and it is going to be extremely helpful to this work. So follow Paradigm Research on Twitter, and please retweet anything I put up. I'm going to be putting up all kinds of lead-in stuff to this. And then, of course, once it gets announced, even more. And then once it goes live, even more. Right now, I'm sitting at 27,000 Twitter followers. I'd like to get that to 100,000 in no less than 60 days. Okay.
All right. Well, let's make that happen.
So that's one thing. And then, again, the retweeting. What was the other thing I was going to... As soon as I have a fixed date for the announcement, I'm going to contact the 200 or 300 media people in my Rolodex, asking if they would be kind enough to book me starting that date forward. Say the announcement is this day. I'm going to say, look, starting the next day, I'm taking all the interviews.
I'll
interview. Right?
Well, we would love to be one of them. For sure.
So look for that. And if you have a podcast, anybody that's out there that has podcasts or whatever, feel free to contact me now. I'm putting the word out, but I'm going to get more aggressive.
I will
contact me about setting up, getting at least the initial discussion underway about setting up an interview down the line, probably in very late February.
I could probably get you on 2 of the biggest UFO shows that are out there. So that UFO podcast and potentially Theories of Everything with Kurt. Sure. Those guys have such massive followings.
Yes.
So maybe we could I could talk to them about you getting on there to be able to.
I can definitely hit up that UFO podcast myself too.
Because people would love to hear from you in this regard, whatever this project is, because it sounds if it's anything like your 2013 Citizens Hearing event, then the world is in for a treat, and
yeah,
it's bigger than that.
So that's what I'm saying.
Really, you're okay.
That's what I'm saying. So I would love to be a part of helping you spread the word on this, and whatever part we can play, we'll play.
And to get back to something you said earlier, as soon as we can get my publicist, I have a publicist in DC that occasionally works for me, but she's like one of the best in all of Washington. I mean, she's like literally a legend. As soon as I get her back on board, there is a very, very good likelihood I will be able to get on all the networks and discuss this as well.
Good.
But in general, I just get on the networks and talk about the issue, right?
Right. That's what,
as you
That's what
know,
we need.
the perspective that I have is not getting on the networks. Okay, I get that. It's not that I can't talk national security. I can, but the political activist perspective, which was the title of the Liberation Times op-ed, which I, again, encourage people to go to liberationtimes.com. It's called UAP, a political activist perspective. When you look at it from that perspective, you see things that others don't see.
right.
There is a take on this that needs to get out there. And the only person right now that's really on that is myself. I'm not saying that others aren't doing it. I'm just not aware of it. But I'm hoping that with a little help from her, I can get on the networks and provide this approach, because the public needs to look and see this from several different angles in order to properly understand what's going down. Because what's going down is huge. I mean, it doesn't get bigger than this.
This is the biggest story. I mean, I don't know how to stress this any more than we already do. This is not just the biggest story of our lives. This is the biggest story
Ever.
in human history.
Nothing has been bigger than this.
I think so. I think so. I mean, there are others. There's some big ones out there. And when you talk in a religious context, I can understand why a person of a certain faith would believe that a certain event of their faith, nothing surpasses it. I understand that. Okay. But from the standpoint of an event that affects the most people in the shortest amount of time, and we've got 8 billion right now, and when disclosure happens, all 8 billion will probably know that in less than 48 hours. Nothing comes close to this. And the implications to everyone, not just the people of this group or that group, but the implications to everybody on the planet of this event disclosure, the confirmation event.
Because you gotta think. I mean, this would be the only, not the only thing. Oh yeah, maybe it would be, aside from a religious event like you had just said. This would be an event, a formal capital D disclosure. Would be a moment where each of us as individuals, as families, we would have to sit down and ask ourselves, what does this mean to me? What is my place in the universe? Does this affect me or my belief system? This would radically change how we see ourselves in the cosmos and in the grand scheme of things. So absolutely, Stephen, that this affects every single person on the planet.
Now, let me go a little further here, because this is what I do. And I know the people that watch me a lot, they're going, oh, here he goes. The thing about being an activist is, as opposed to being maybe just a researcher, right? You research this and you talk about it, and then you go research that and you research that. If you're an activist, basically your job is to pound home the same message over and over and over again until you get the result you want, which kind of make you a little bit, how would you say, annoying. But
persistent is the one I like.
Take the hammer out.
But again, that's why I tend to be trying to bring in the humor, because if you're going to pound the same message over and over again, you better make people laugh. You know, what's that great? There's a maximum that I love. It says, if you're going to tell people the truth, make sure they laugh, otherwise they'll kill you. Right? Something like that. Look, there is an organization made up of a very substantial number of former Intel professionals, almost all retired. It's a serious organization. It is tied into the government, meaning it is wired in through connections and sources and so forth. These are not trivial people. And they created an entity called DEFCON Disclosure, a DEFCON, how could I forget this? Hello. It's I'm having one of those old guy moments here. Hang on, I'll get it. Okay, just a second. It is nope. Oh, I gotta go here. This is kind of important, so forgive me.
Yeah, no, take your time because I want to write this
I'll
down.
have it in a second. I just can't believe I got it. It's called DEFCON Level. DEFCONlevel.com.
DEFCON level.
Now, here's what you need to know. What this group is doing, and I mean they're putting a huge amount of effort into this, is they are tracking the nuclear risk levels in all the major commands around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Northern Command, Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America, and so forth. All right? And the levels that they assign are basically the levels that our government is assigning, the DoD. But the government doesn't post those. Okay, basically, they just don't tell you. DEFCON levels are internal. In other words, the government, if they're going to raise the DEFCON level, they will notify a certain area, a certain segment of the military in a particular command and saying, we're raising that level to such and such, so you know. Now, if something is big enough, it can get out in the public. But generally, no. A lot of people don't know that they raised the DEFCON level in one of our strategic commands, not the entire military, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. They raised it to 2. The only times it's ever been a 2. So
Really?
This is a big deal. A year and a half ago, the DEFCON levels throughout the commands were all of the nations in all of the commands were at 4. 5 is like, hey, let's party. 4 is like, nothing to worry about. 3, you're not going to be concerned. 2, you better start thinking about what you're going to do. 1, it's too late. Sayonara. All right?
Right.
And so everything was 4. And I don't know what Europe was. I'm thinking it might have been 3, but I'm not sure. All I know is that once the troops started gathering, once Putin started gathering his forces around the Ukraine, the DEFCON levels went up. And in due course, the DEFCON level in Europe was at 2. DEFCON 1 is nuclear war. Now, nuclear war, that'd be global. In other words, if you've got 2 sides and one side is using nukes, that's nuclear war. So they're saying that we're right up against nuclear weapons being used. It was 2. And the United States was 3. All right. And the rest of the world was 3. About 2 months ago, 2 things happened. No, a month and a half. Man, roughly in the same rough span, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, 2 things happened. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists moved the clock closer to midnight a second time in a year, in a few months, from 100 seconds to 90 seconds. It's the closest it's ever been. Okay. This is not trivial. These people are not, this is not a game, right? When they move it to draw attention. That's the whole reason the clock was created in 47. 90 seconds to midnight is not good. At the same time, DEFCONlevel.com moved the DEFCON level in the United States from 3 to 2. Currently, we are 2. In fact, all Europe, the United States, Asia, and one other are all 2. The only ones that are 3 is Latin America and I'll get that. Hang on a second. Let me get this right. I don't want to mess this up.
I've been on this website before, just now that I'm thinking about it.
Okay. Yeah. So right now, the Europe is 2, and America is. Maybe America was. Let me see if I got this right. America may have been 4, now 3. Hang on a second. Okay. I'm sorry. Europe is 2, and I think Europe is 2. Asia is 2. Mideast is 2. Those were not that case. They were moved up from 3. So Asia and the Mideast are now also at DEFCON 2, meaning that a nuclear event, nuclear war type event, in any of those 3 commands could happen at any time.
It is yeah.
And meanwhile, the other ones were moved to 3. The only ones that are not at 3, but are at 4, which is let's see. Latin America. Okay. Where's Latin America? There you are. Latin America is 3. Latin America is 3, and I think one other is at 3. Where is it? It might be Africa. No, Africa is also at 2.
Jeez.
The only one that is not at DEFCON 2 at this website is Latin America. So let's think about this for a second. All right. If you go to DEFCON level 2, you just don't see this level thing. What they are doing is they are chronologically putting in every single thing happening in that command that is affecting that level. And you can literally follow them. You can literally read and go back and see, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. They're literally showing it, and with a link to more in-depth analysis of what's going on in these areas that is driving this level.
Right.
And when you start reading that level 2 starts to have meaning. In other words, we are in a really, really dangerous situation now. And, I don't want to upset anybody's day. Okay, but it is what it is.
And
okay?
Why is nobody paying the fuck? I hate to use that language, but why? It seems like everybody's more concerned with TikTok and all these things. Not, I don't know if they're just burying their head in the sand, but
I think that's part of it.
the deadliest conflict in Europe since World War II is going down.
And has been for months.
Well, they're talking about that, God knows, but they're not talking now. Look, way beyond what we saw with Iraq, way beyond what we saw during the Vietnam War, even beyond the Cuban Missile Crisis, there has been extensive reportage, commentary, and analysis from inside people about the risk of nuclear event in Ukraine. I mean, there's been tons of it. There's no question. All right, and so this is a case so severe that they can't just normalize it. And so that's part of the reason that these levels are now at 2 in all these command areas. But if you read the listings that DEFCON level is providing, you see a lot of stuff that the news is not mentioning. In other words, in addition to what you're hearing in the press, they're giving you other stuff that you are not aware of, that is not covered, that is saying this happened, that happened, this ship movement over here. It is an extraordinary sight, which is depressing as hell, because it's really if you've been living that kind of I want to say detached, you've normalized the whole thing, as many have. As the second Cold War got underway, people said we're not going through another Cold War, so I'm just not accepting that. I'm not accepting a Cold War II. I'm sorry. I'm
out of sight,
out
out of mind.
Okay,
right.
I'm starting to seem like this week tonight, right? I'm just not accepting it. Well, history and reality doesn't care what you accept or don't accept.
That's right.
And so they're not reacting. They're not dealing with it. The politicians will not really go there. Nobody wants to hear a politician say, all of the commands save one is a DEFCON 2 or 3 in the world, because it scares people. Well, sometimes you need to be scared. Now, why am I doing this? Why am I going there? Well, it's because of a fundamental message embedded in, I think, the entire phenomena since 1947. We have been heading for a nuclear war since the day we did the Trinity test, for crying out loud. The moment we did that first test, nuclear war was off to the running, right?
Yeah, because the probability, just by having the technology and the weaponry, the rate for using that in a deadly way grew 1,000%.
The inherent danger of somebody getting it into their hands that isn't a military power, for instance.
Oh yeah, the NGO, non-government operators, non-state operators. Let me put it this way: when we cracked open the atom and ultimately started doing research on weaponization, the ETs knew it. When we tested that first bomb at Trinity, the ETs knew it. And when we dropped those bombs on our own human species in Japan, the ETs saw it. And guess what? Within a couple of months, sightings started occurring in 46. A lot of them were not known at the time. Retroactively, the historians were finding out, hey, there was a lot of reporters going on. But it was often a paper here, an article here, because you didn't have the internet. You didn't have massive news. But it turns out 46 was a lot more lively than people think. And so suddenly the ETs upped their game. And then, of course, the game became so intense that so many things were flying around, they started crashing for whatever reason. All right. And of course, Roswell being the most famous, but there's another one that might have happened in 45, which I want to put a pin in because I'm going to come back to that.
The Trinity crash. I read the book.
The Trinity crash. And the reason let me just quickly mention that one of the cool things that happened is that because of some lobbying efforts going on in Washington, which I don't know if I can talk about that or not, but there is some lobbying going effort by an organization that's funded. Apparently they may have been the ones, this effort might have been the reason why Mike Gallagher, who I need to talk about him too, went ahead and inserted at the last minute during reconciliation, a little bit, just a tiny little bit of language, nothing big, that kind of set the mission statement back to 45.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
That's right.
And the reason he did it was to pick up the Trinity case.
That's right.
Otherwise, why not take it back to 45?
Just to Roswell? They would have just started at Roswell.
He's obviously aware of it.
Okay,
he is in the know of, you know,
and we
unlike,
need to talk about Mike Gallagher.
Yeah, unlike all these other Congress people who, you know, even, you know, at that first hearing that just clearly didn't do their homework and were not asking the right questions.
Well, you know, they knew what they knew and they're doing what they can do.
Yeah,
but again,
it's
just only going to get better and better.
Yeah, no fault to their own. It's just it was they were unprepared in my opinion, and you know, but that's beside the point. Yeah. But this guy, he's the guy. He knows what he's doing, and he knows the dates that like you said, 1945. There's only one reason to include that date.
Trinity case. Okay, but let's put a pin in Mike Gallagher. I want to come back to him. So I got a point to make here. Okay. And so again, so much activity is taking place that we have some crash events, and Roswell being the most famous. Fine. But we know what happened after that. It's been an escalation ever since. All right. But particularly of note is that while the government got a respite between July of 47, after they corrected the press release for 5 years, when they were kind of going, okay, we're skating here. Looks like it's going to be okay. Simpson sightings, nobody cares. It's no news. Who knows, right? The ETs decided to make a stronger statement. And over a period of, I think, 18 days, I think it was out to check, they flew over Washington.
Yes.
52, July. I think the most important event of the whole 70 years, a lot of ways. They flew over Washington for a number of days, being seen by many people, picked up on radar. This was the Great Washington Flap. This was a message, I believe, to the government. Look, you guys are, you're still sitting on this, and you're not paying attention. Let me get your attention. All right, and so that was a big deal. And this is in my op-ed in the Liberation Times. The government had a decision right then, and they almost did it. There was a couple of press conferences that were notable. Look, they can go where they want. They can fly where they want. They want to fly over Washington. They can do it every day. I think we better tell the people about this. Let's get it out. Let's have a press, whatever the hell. Let's get it out. Let's do in 1953 what they're doing right now. That is not the path they chose. What they did is the CIA pulled a panel together called the Robertson Panel, and they chewed it over, and a bunch of smart people had a lot of discussions about it, and they came up with a report. And the conclusion of the report was this phenomena, which just scared the hell out of you in July of 52, it's not actually a threat. We're not seeing a formal threat, but the public's growing interest in it is a threat.
Is a threat, yes.
It is a threat to our national security by creating whatever, some confusion and what have you. And so they went the other way. And the decision was, don't tell the people, embargo it for a while. We don't know how long, and see what happens. And that, of course, was a seminal thing. All right. So what took place after that is that we went forward with the Cold War. 9 countries eventually joined in. And by the mid-'80s, as we're approaching the end of the Cold War, there was 80-some thousand nuclear weapons stockpiled. That's a lot of nuclear weapons, all right? And then the Cold War ends in 91. And so we didn't have the nuclear war that the ETs are sitting there fully thinking that's what they're going to do, these crazy people.
Right.
And now we had a chance to possibly really engage the issue of nuclear proliferation with the Soviets, who were no longer Soviets. They were now just Russians, and they had outlawed their party. And maybe with the Chinese, whatever. We didn't do it. We blew it. And so instead of doing what needed to be done after the Cold War, we ended up literally setting the stage for Cold War II and where we are today, which is 90 seconds from midnight. All right. And so the point I'm making here is that I am absolutely convinced that there is a direct relationship with the ET presence and their activities, the Cold War and our nuclear proliferation and the threat of nuclear war. They are virtually connected. And that what is happening and what has to happen is that disclosure is not simply, oh, we finally knew there are ETs here. No. Disclosure means we can finally address the fact that we're not alone in the universe. There's ETs here, and everybody knows it now, and they are not threatened by our nuclear weapons. They even turn them off. There's a message there, maybe, and a whole galaxy that we might be able to explore if we can get some cool interstellar ships.
Right.
Why are we threatening each other with 20,000 nukes? Why did we just build new hypersonic nuclear weapons? I mean, missiles that are virtually impossible to take down. What the hell are we doing? Disclosure.
There's no abort
for that discussion.
You know what scares, and you're absolutely right, with these new hypersonic, because on missiles to date, not to date, before these new hypersonic missiles, you could abort a launch. Like if you launched, you had the ability to abort the launch.
Right.
With these hypersonic missiles, once they're up in the air, donezo.
You can't shoot them down either. And by the way, Putin has bragged about them. They've tested them. The Chinese have tested them, right? We are behind the curve on that. So obviously there's a big, hypersonic missile program underway right now. All right. And recently it was announced that Putin just sent a ship out to, I forget which zone, that is carrying hypersonic missiles. They're not saying whether they're armed or not, but he's basically sending a message. We got them, and we can put them on a ship, and the ship's out there. This is, of course, endgame stuff. I mean, this is why people watch the Walking Dead show religiously.
Right. I mean, this is check set.
Extremely dangerous.
This is check set and match. You know.
Yeah, this is it. Like they're playing with fire. They really are.
We're on the brink. All right.
Mutually assured destruction was not only outdated then, but it is so outdated now.
It's a silly policy.
We can no longer, as a society, as a human civilization, go on with the notion that just because you're not going to blow me up, I won't blow you up.
That's gone. I mean, it worked for a while. There was many decades there when it was pretty straightforward, and it did work. Nobody would be insane to launch ICBMs. Now, it almost happened on several occasions, but it didn't. Those were accidents. Okay, the idea of deliberately launching them, ultimately mutual assured destruction. But the technology has changed. You're talking about orbital nukes that you can't detect being launched because it looks like it's a standard, or what the hell, it's a satellite. And that opens up the door to EMT events. You're talking about tactical nukes. They've gotten smaller and smaller. You're talking suitcase nukes, non-state operators. And so mutual assured destruction was basically worthless some time ago. And we've just been surviving on luck. All right. Yeah. And so, the message I like to get off, and again, this is maybe something CNN is not going to want me to come on and talk about, but if they do, I think they'll get some fantastic reviews, is that disclosure is being partially driven by ET activity. It has always been partially driven. That's not to say that they're orchestrating it or they're meeting with the government every 6 weeks to compare notes. They don't need to do that. They can drive this process simply by their activities. Okay. And so if they want, if they've got, I don't know, 50 or 60 Tic Tac drones, which they're probably drones, but they're not human, but they're ET made Tic Tac drones, and they want to fly a bunch of them by an aircraft carrier group one year, what the hell? It's okay. It gets the message across, doesn't it? Don't hide them. Let's let them see them today, right? Maybe see. So all of they don't need to be seen like they're seen, and yet they are. This in and of itself, and they're definitely more in being seen in terms of armed. Military settings, right? This seems to be getting much more intense. They're driving the process, right? To where? What is the point? I only see one: ending this embargo, getting the governments to just tell the people, hey, we're not alone. There's ETs here. Let's talk about it. Now, but what's the reason for that? Why end the embargo? I'm saying that the nuclear weapons tampering events is the key. That is what you need to open the door. In other words, you end the embargo so that you will deal with that finally. All right. We cannot continue with 15, 20,000 nuclear weapons and leaders of the type that we are seeing still in this world who are willing to invade other countries and think we're going to get lucky, continue to be lucky. We are going to have that nuclear war. And then some people respond to that by saying, oh, it's okay, because they're going to stop all the nukes in the air and turn them, like in that movie, The Hitchhiker's
Can't rely on that.
The Galaxy, into flowers or whatever the hell, right?
You can't rely on that at all.
No, we cannot.
We can't.
They're not responsible for us. I mean, at least as far as we know. Why would they make that kind of decision on our behalf?
Someone actually said, because someone actually said that to me is, oh, well, yeah, like even if, we were told, that they can stop the nuclear catastrophe from happening, and or they would just switch it off. It's like, well, we can't rely on the kindness of
others. They're not going to hold our hand. They're waiting for us to figure it out.
We might be an experiment, right?
I mean,
free will.
We
don't know.
Whatever. I don't know if you ever played Hold'em poker. That's called going all in.
That's all in.
In other words, here's my play. I'm not worried about the nukes. I'm not worried about Ukraine. I'm not worried about suitcases and non-state operators. I'm not worried about an accident, because even if there's an accident that might make a country want to launch and they do launch, it's okay, because the ETs are going to stop it. In which case, we're pretty much okay. We might lose the odd city. We're never going to have a nuclear war. The future looks bright. And if we're wrong, it's over. It's all over. You're out of money. You're busted. Leave the casino. Take a bus home. You're done. What politician or what thinker is going to say, yeah, the human race needs to go all in on this, right? We don't need to worry about any of this stuff. The ETs will take care of it. So disclosure for me has always been, and this is what I mean by the political activist perspective. If you don't look at it from this perspective, you do not arrive at these conclusions. You keep going back to the same thing, trying to prove this case, that case, right? The ET's good, are they bad, whatever. Relive the history. I get that. That's okay. But when you come from the political activist perspective, if you come from an anti-war perspective, and you say, why do the ETs do what they do? How do you interpret their actions? How do they respond to what we do? And what are we doing in this world? What we're doing in this world is destroying the environment, overpopulating the planet, and continuing to build even more powerful, more dangerous nuclear weapons. That's what we do. All right. Now, would the ETs care about that? I think they would. Would they respond? I think they would. Are they doing things to respond? I think they are. Okay. And so this is a message that has to get out, because one, disclosure must happen. And I want to encourage people to keep the heat on. I'm not saying protest, get violent. I'm simply saying keep the pressure on. And the way to keep pressure is telling everybody that does something right, like Gallagher and Diego and Mario and Rubio, rather, and Warner, and tell them all how wonderful that is. Just praise them to victory. All right. But we have to get this done. That's point number one. Okay. Because if we don't, the nuclear war is going to happen, and then it won't matter. So this is, in other words, no one that I have not seen a single person even come close in the public arena with any presentation or TED Talk. Those TED Talks. I've applied. They never invite me. A TED Talk that explains how we're going to get out from this nuclear mutual assured destruction dilemma and the nuclear threat that we're facing. Meaning, oh, here's what you need to do. It's no problem. They don't even try. Name one politician that has come forward with anything remotely like a cogent explanation of how we're going to get out of this. They don't even try because they don't think we can. All they're thinking is, look, I just want to be a congressman or a senator as long as I can. Then the war comes.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm living
right.
well. What the hell, right? But there's not a damn thing I can do about it. That's not good enough. All right. And so the message that I'm saying and want to say on every network out there is that there is a way. It happens to be connected to the ET presence, and it happens to be connected to disclosure if you can fit it together. Okay. What will be the view of Russia, of China, of the United States, and the other 6 nuclear countries about these weapons once the entire world knows that the galaxy is crawling with civilizations,
Right.
and that they're able to move around from planet to planet, and they've been dropping in for thousands of years, and they're really kind of concerned about us. Is that going to be enough to bring them to the table? Hell, if that doesn't do it, well, what the hell?
Then we're fucked anyway.
Yeah, we're screwed. Maybe
Steven, I got a question for you. Go ahead.
Just real quick to make my point. Then you can ask. If we don't start seeing ourselves, because the ETs, when they look at Earth and us, they see us as a whole, not as countries.
Sure.
But they know. I'm sure they know of countries, and they know how stupid it is that we have them. But they look at it as we are human, all of us. And if we don't start seeing ourselves as one civilization, one human race, then that's again, that's going to be our demise.
But they're also they're pretty smart. They understand how life evolves. Probably they understand it from the ground up. I have a feeling, and they're familiar with many, how would you say, life planets? Okay, yeah. And many which maybe have sentient civilizations. All right, they're probably. I believe that the truth of the matter is, and I could be wrong, but that all life, other than some really artificial civilization where you bring some sentient beings in and give them a little colony somewhere, and what all life that develops organically in a life-giving planet pretty much evolves the same way, natural selection. And so consequently, you don't get the sentience unless you go through the process of an endless series of species evolving and dying, changing, and so forth. In other words, warlike sentient beings is probably the norm. In other words, you don't get to civilization level where a planet has life that eventually starts building things that doesn't have war, because that life evolves out of an endless conflict in which you're constantly having to kill other things to stay alive. And the winner, the survivor of this whole process, is the one that evolves. I get it. But at some point, you have to give that up. Now, giving up billions of years of evolution, which is built into your DNA, is not easy. I'm sure they respect that. They get that. In other words, I think they understand that, like, hey, the idea that you just want to kill everybody that doesn't look like you, we get it. We understand.
Yeah, we went through it.
Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, brought it home, gave it to my kid, whatever the hell, right? And so we're here to help. Now, it's a legitimate question. Why don't they just come in, take over, whatever, turn everything off? And I don't know. You'll ask them. Though there is 2 movies, one's a remake, that really get that point across. And we know the ones we're talking about. You probably already guessed it. The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original and the remake.
Yep.
That's all about something very fundamental, which most people don't get well enough when they watch those movies. And I'm sure there's been papers about it. Okay. This is an ET intervention, essentially based on the fact that, you're really screwing up. And while it was presented much more powerfully in the second film, which I happen to like a great deal, right, more than the first, okay, it's like, well, basically both those films, the second one is the most powerful in that it is predicated on the idea that we've given up on you. We know that you can't get through this. We did, you can't, too bad, and we're here to pull the plug. And so in the second film, the remake, the Keanu Reeves' character is here to orchestrate the pulling of all kinds of life species and genetic stuff off the planet and sending it off so that it can continue to survive elsewhere. So the legacy of our planet's current DNA at the time and the life that lives there, it's like the Ark in a way, is going to be preserved and not lost to history. Okay, and then you're going to be blown up. You're going to be destroyed. All right, and so then they set loose the destroyer, right? The nanotech off the thing, right? And they take off, and they're basically taking off to destroy the planet. Okay, there'll be nothing left, right? A lot of people didn't get that either, and so, but she pleads with him, right? Like we often do. We plead too, in a way. You'd be surprised. Sometimes we do it in prayers in a church, whatever. We're pleading to a higher power. Don't do it. There's value here. The humans are not as bad as you think. And so what he does is he turns it off. And you may remember, he turns it off, and all those billions of nano machines drop to the ground. And we're saved. But most people didn't catch the very final aspect of that film. There was a price that was paid. All technology was shut down. Now, what that means is that, okay, the planet goes on, some people will go on. You shut down all the technology in the planet, you'll reduce the population probably by 80% within
You're sending them back to you're sending them back to the Stone Age.
No, not the Stone Age. Not the Stone. I'm saying that it's shut down. Now, I don't know exactly what that means. It's kind of a metaphor.
Oh, okay.
It's not. He's not blowing it up. It's shutting it down. You can't have, and it reduces the population and allows you to kind of rebuild again. That was lost at the end, and they made it subtly. They didn't want to overplay that because it's pretty harsh. Okay, but that concept that we're engaging in this discussion right now is along the same lines, but it's not nearly as severe. They can destroy us anytime they want to. Obviously, we haven't offended her that much. As case with the day the Earth stood still. In fact, they've gone to a lot of lengths to sort of work with this a little bit. Right. They put crop circles down every year in the UK, even though some of them are human and most of them aren't. And they're pretty and nice, and they turn off missiles that say, "Hey, look, don't eat those," and they fly around. They don't run into our airplanes, whatever. They're showing a certain commitment. Which may go back thousands of years, but obviously ET presence 3,000 years ago was not the same as now. That was whatever they wanted or did then, that's fine. It's what they're doing now that matters, because we are a fully global, high-tech, spacefaring civilization. And so we're not the Egyptians, and there's just no comparison other than the history. It's fascinating, and I'd love to know the details. This is game time. This is the seminal moment in the history of the evolution of life on this planet. Understand that on the Earth, over the last billions of years, millions upon millions of species have come and gone. Huge, might be billions. So this idea that species come and go, that's normal. So the idea that our species could completely disappear would be completely normal, right? So, okay, what's the difference? Why should they care? I mean, the dinosaurs, they may have been here for that. They're gone.
They ruled the Earth for far longer than we have.
So
I think there's something about humans that sets us apart.
No, not about humans. It's about not humans specifically. It is the fact that whatever planet we're on or whatever form we take, we are fully sentient beings.
Right.
Okay.
Wholly conscious, self-aware. There's a connection to
sentience is something. when sentience came about, and whenever that happened, I don't know, but it's not that old. All right. When sentience came about, that was the result of billions of years of evolution, leading to something very extraordinary. Right. There's no question. A sentient being is an extraordinary thing. A sentient being can be technological and can travel, can be interstellar. That makes us any sentient being special. Okay. Now, a lot of people say, well, what about the porpoises, and what about the crustaceans? They're also sentient. I fully believe they are. I think the elements are sentient. Well, we shouldn't be killing them either. We should be treating them well, but they don't have the ability to build computers and rockets. And so there's sentience, and then there is sentience. We are sentience with fingers. We are them, in a sense.
Right.
And having us destroy ourselves and remove that from the universe, from reality, after billions of years it took to develop, apparently they see as an unacceptable outcome.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs, they're way too big anyway.
I have a theory on that. I kind of think that they might have had a hand to play in
the
that.
dinosaurs.
Yeah, maybe they knew
I've
that.
thought about that.
Maybe they knew that they were not going to be the ones.
Out a little bit.
Yeah, they weren't going to be the ones.
I don't know if they need to be that granular. Besides, it was an awful long time ago.
That's a conversation for another.
That's a sci-fi movie worth writing, though, for sure.
That's an ancient.
That thing that hit in the Gulf. More than
over in the Yucatan.
Yeah, that's an episode of Ancient Aliens.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Again, these are complicated, tricky subjects, and I know some people think they're not interesting. I get that, but again, I'm not doing this because I want to meet an ET. Well, it would be okay, I wouldn't mind. I'm not doing this because I'm a sci-fi buff. I didn't choose to be born in '46. I didn't choose to live during the Cold War. I didn't choose to live under the nuclear threat my entire life. I didn't choose to see movies that describe what it would be like, right? There's been so many movies that literally show, here's what a nuclear war would look like. Oh, that's not good at all. I didn't choose that, right? That's the life I was born in. I didn't choose to be born in a time when the ETs are flying all over the place, right? In a modern context. All right. So, but this is what it is. And so I've chosen to engage this, and I know others have done the same. Not so much on the political side, but you're going to see more of that. All right. The political engagement of this issue ultimately is what's most important to the human race, not proving the issue 500 times over. Right. All right. That's fine, but we proved it. Right. The political aspect is what is most important. The paradigm shift is what is most important. Now, it's possible that a species could reach sentience and technology and not go the path that we went on. Meaning, for whatever reason, their history in general was such that, wow, we're really smart. We're cracking open the atom. We're figuring out how to make lasers. But why in the hell would we want to make weapons out of those things, Right. And there's a couple of billion people living on the planet and they're generally getting along. I mean, that is not out of the question. And so how the ETs would have engaged that planet, I imagine would be quite different, meaning that it would be just a matter of, hey, when they're getting to the level where they go interstellar or develop, spacefaring technology, let's go public with them and what have you. That's very possible.
Or who's to say that, another species even went the flow that we did, where the combustion engine was the start, or the horse and buggy, then the combustion engine. Who's to say they didn't skip right to anti-gravity because they had the key to it, and that's just where they started.
Or they didn't use metal, they decided to use stone. This kind of like touches on what Graham Hancock works on. It's like, well, was there an ancient civilization that was advanced on Earth, but it wasn't using metal and the materials we normally use?
But it wasn't a threat. It wasn't a threat to them, and it wasn't a threat to. And by the way, while we are not a threat to them now, and turning off our nukes is a nice way of pointing that out. The moment we are able to build a ship that can go from one star to another, I don't care how it does it, wormholes, whatever. I mean, there's several angles that are being looked at. We become a threat, don't we? Of course we do.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, we do.
Right?
The Europeans were not
we can reach them.
The Europeans were not a threat to the South American indigenous people until they arrived by boat. Okay, and then it became a real problem. And if the indigenous people of the Aztecs and the Mayans and of South America could have done it, and somehow they could have snuck into Europe and destroyed all the ships, right, and killed everybody that could build one. They probably would have, because they, my God, if we don't do that, you're going to show up and kill us all off. Well, guess what? All right. Look, it doesn't take a genius to know that if humans could build a starship, we're not just going to go on out there with a big peace sign on the front. We're going to put a bunch of nukes in the back of it just in case as a precaution. Yeah. And so we then become a threat. And you may say, oh, no, they could see all of that. Now, wait a minute. Think about this. Imagine you had scores or hundreds and hundreds of civilizations that were not engaged by ETs, developed starships. They put nukes on them and lasers, all kinds of stuff, and they're flying around the galaxy like in sci-fi movies, looking for somebody to kill. That would not be good. And so if I am an advanced civilization or a group of civilizations, one of my priorities is to make damn sure that doesn't happen. Right. And so anytime a civilization becomes sufficiently technologically advanced that they are capable of finally doing what ETs do, which is go interstellar, and unless weapons of war virtually not in their game plan, you have to intervene. You have to intervene. It's that simple.
It's that simple.
2,000 years
really
ago,
is.
that's not intervening. The intervention starts the moment that becomes a realistic possibility. The bombs are real, but what most citizens don't know, and the politicians probably don't know either because they don't bother, is that if you dig deep enough and you start looking in the right places, you will discover that we are closing in on interstellar drive. And I believe we have it well before the end of the century. We could have it within 30 years. Now, is it absolutely certain? No, but they're literally massaging it and working with it and coming up with various approaches and so forth. And of course, and that's just what's in the public domain. I'm sure that the governments of the world, particularly the big nations, have been working on interstellar drive from day one. They want it so bad they could taste it. Now, the ETs know this. And so consequently, whatever the game plan is, it has to culminate before we get that, because that's a big problem. And so I tie it all together this way. This is what I would actually say on CNN before they cut the mic off, okay? That the whole process since 47 is leading to a point where we can self-disclose. Self-disclose opens up the whole door to the post-disclosure world and a reassessment of our place in the world and a reassessment of our policies and everything else. At some point, maybe 2 years later, open contact, real open contact takes place. I'm talking about open contact, okay? We're exchanging text messages,
public,
emails, whatever the hell. They have their own Facebook page, whatever, open contact, where real discussions are taking place between the nations of the world and the ETs themselves about how to deal with this whole nuclear weapon thing, okay? And one way or another, some sort of understanding will be reached on that. There are several possibilities. That is what I would say on CNN, right? And then I would say, look, if somebody wants to come on and talk to me online on camera about this and make a case why that's complete malarkey, I would welcome it. I would say, hey, what's your theory? What do you think's going on? Okay, so that's how big it is. Are we actually in a process in which the ET intervention is achieving its fundamental goal, disclosure, leading to the next phase, which is not simply post-disclosure, but also an open contact situation, where then we come to an understanding finally about what our future is? And there's only a couple of ways that goes. One is get rid of the nukes, okay? And you can fly on out if you want, and you can even work with us. You can be part of our group.
Cosmic Brotherhood.
Right? Get rid of the nukes. You can be part of our
Galactic
group.
Federation.
Okay. If you don't want to get rid of nukes, okay, all right, but we're not going to work with you.
Yeah,
we're not. You can't join the club. You can't hang out on the weekends with us. Oh, and by the way, if you
can't
build a
leave
starship,
your solar system.
Yeah, it's never going to leave the planet.
Boundary
I mean, we'll turn it into like in that movie. We'll turn it into a flower or something, you know.
Right.
Or we'll just melt it, and you can then use the melt for other purposes. You're never leaving the planet. Okay, that's
right.
One way it could go. All right. There are other possibilities, but if we'll have that decision to make, and if the answer is, look, no, we're never going to give up with the nukes, and we'll live with the fact that we can't leave the planet, they will say, fine, okay, no problem. If you have the nuclear war, we may check back, see how you're doing, and maybe we could revisit this whole subject. But we got a whole galaxy to hang out with. We don't need to babysit the Earth. Okay, if you're determined to destroy yourselves, what can we do? Some humans will still survive. There will still be humans. The Earth will continue, but it just won't be kind of like it is now. It won't be quite as comfortable as it is now. And we live long, so we'll check back in 1,000 years, see how you're doing. These are just a couple of the few possible outcomes that come from this scenario: disclosure, post-disclosure, open contact. Let's talk. That's what's we're headed for.
That's intense.
Whether you want to go there or not, that's what's going to happen.
So
Stephen, or here, Ty.
yeah, no. That's what I was kicking off to. So I know Tom had a question.
Yeah, I have because this is a discussion I've been having with a lot of people online,
Yes.
especially on Twitter. All of this aside, just everything we've been talking about, what would you say to someone that approaches you after hearing our discussion today and says, "You're full of it, Stephen. This isn't real. We're not being visited. It's all crap." This is the question that I'm going to ask everyone that I interview, because there's a lot of people out there, Mick West, etc., that think that we're wasting our time and that there isn't sufficient evidence. What do you say to a statement like that? That there is no there?
Sure. Let me help. All right. I've been asked that question many times, and you're going to get the same answer. Everybody on this planet will figure out that we're not alone in their own good time. Don't take it on yourself to be the one that does that for them. All right. This is not the way it works. Speak truth, do research, get the information out, try to move the governments in the right direction, support those that want to go there, get disclosure, and so forth. That is a process leading to change, right? Activism is not about convincing everybody that the core issue that you're dealing with is this or that. The civil rights movement was not about convincing everybody to give up their racist thinking and become,
Preach.
No, because it doesn't work that way. People will move from that posture in their own good time. Civil rights was about creating laws and policies that made it easier for people to function in our society. The disclosure movement is not about convincing everybody the ETs are here. The disclosure movement is about getting the government to do what it's supposed to do with respect to the truth and reality of this issue, to make it easier for it to deal with this issue. And even after disclosure, there'll still be people that saying, I'm not buying it. The whole thing is a put on, right? It's all fake. It's AI, whatever the hell. It's okay. It's all right.
There'll always be the naysayers.
Anybody about this.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? And if they say, look, you're full of crap, I'll say, I probably am. There are times when I am, and I appreciate you don't get it. It's okay. It's all right. Check in once in a while. Keep an open mind. It may come around. There's no reason for this to be a battle between believers and non-believers. I hate the word. I despise it. But believer and non-believer has been a very prominent concept in duality in the area of religion, where I'm a believer in this religion and that a person is a believer in this religion. Can I convince you to my side? No. Okay, you must die.
Right.
That's not where we're at. This isn't about believing. This is about being convinced of certain truths or not being convinced. And the only way you get convinced is you get enough knowledge and you arrive at it in your good time. You cannot be pounded into being convinced. I didn't go to school and college to learn physics to have somebody hit me over the head until I believe, that quantum physics was real. The only way I could get there is if they gave me enough information until I was convinced, yeah, this quantum physics things it's real.
Yeah, you directly apprehended it. It's like, I can give you the equation 2 + 2, or I can tell you it's raining outside, but until you go look and see that it's raining outside, for yourself, that's the direct apprehension. So, we can give people the equation, but it's going to be up to them to come to their own conclusion.
And if you're a toxic debunker like Class, if you're somebody that's actually out trying to hurt the issue and hurt the people in it simply for your own needs, hey, okay, but again, what do you do, right? If the person doesn't break the law, they can do what they're going to do. So we have much bigger fish to fry than dealing with the various negative angles that are coming in on this. We're past that anyway, right? The truth embargo loved it when we fought amongst ourselves, trying to convince each other or whatever, and getting angry. They loved it because we just spin our wheels, nothing happens. All right. What they didn't want is for a reasonable number of people to coalesce with a mission and a plan to get government to do something. All right. And the truth embargo was incredibly effective of preventing that kind of coalescence. It took a lot. I got into it in 96. It wasn't there yet. And frankly, those that got in early, they're gone because it didn't happen. I got lucky. 96 was late enough that I was able to benefit, and the movement was able to benefit from the rise of the internet and then social media and technology and the democratization of journalism. Almost all of that has helped to ensure that this time we would get coalescence. There is now a clear disclosure movement in many parts of the world. Just recently, a group called ICER convinced the nation of San Marino to submit a proposal to the General Assembly of the UN to try to get the UN involved, which the UN desperately wants to get involved in, but the truth embargo says no, 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 no. Duplicating what happened all the way back in '78, when Lee Spiegel and Gordon Cooper and tried, got Granada and Edmund Gary to try to approach the UN, and they got something going there, and then it disappeared. Okay, but it was too soon. Well, it only took 44 more years, but it's happening again. Only this time, it's going to have a lot more traction. This is now a fait accompli. The only question is it going to take 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, right? And the reason that I am pressing so hard, and I hope I can do this on some of the networks, for why those hearings must happen now. I don't care what bells and whistles you're dealing with or whatever. We need those hearings in front of the Intel Committee immediately. Okay.
Yeah.
Meaning, hey, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, no problem. And they say, well, why? You know how it goes on in Congress. They get an issue. They may put off dealing with it for 3 years. We don't have 3 years.
We don't. We're
90 seconds to midnight. And to the extent that anybody on the Hill, and I'm not saying that they haven't, because believe me, there has been private briefings. There has been now formal private classified briefings. There's been formal classified briefings from the DOD. The number of people on the Hill that know a lot is way beyond where it was even 8, 9, 10 years ago. Okay. There's a lot of information, and it's floating around up there. They're being talked about in the lunchrooms, and certain members of Congress that weren't really tipped in or given briefings or learning about it and deciding that they're going to go public. Do you hear me, Tim Burchett? Right?
Yes.
He was one of the guys that got briefed, but he got tipped off, and he says, I'm not a potted plant. I'm going out there, and he can't go a week without getting in front of a camera and saying the ETs are here. And he's a member of Congress, and he hasn't gotten any blowback. Neither is Mike Gallagher. Mike Gallagher is front and center on this issue. He's put language in the thing. He hasn't suffered one iota of political blowback. Not only that, he's a rising star in the Republican Party and was just made chairman of a brand new select committee on China, which probably will be one of the most important committees in the entire Congress. That's what comes from championing the ET issue now. All right. And so again, look, all this is wonderful, but Putin doesn't care, right? He could give a crap whether we hold hearings or don't hold hearings. He's doing his thing. He's doing his Stalin czar. I'm going to go out in glory thing, whatever. Not that there isn't some fault on both sides. Doesn't matter, right? So he started this war. He's taken us to DEFCON 2 and 6 commands, all right? Whatever effect disclosure might have on the prospects of avoiding nuclear war, we are not going to find out unless we get disclosure. And we're not going to get it until we get these hearings underway. That is the path we have to travel to get the president. Now, the president at any time, who knows more, I'm sure, than you think he does, could short circuit the whole thing. He could look at the situation in Ukraine and say, oh my God. He could read the tea leaves and go, the Congress is too slow. And he could do a force majeure. And any one of the presidents could have done this, right?
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you here. He simply calls up the Secretary of Defense and says, we don't have time here. I understand that there are issues. I understand that there's all kinds of issues attached to getting this done, but we don't have time. So I'm going to do it. I want you to put together within 48 hours a complete presentation that would be made from you guys when I call for it. Put everybody on the alert. I'm going to tell the public about the ET presence in 48 hours. And does it? Okay. Is it ideal? No. A little more disruptive? Yeah. Politically risky because it looks partisan? Yes. But again, it won't matter. If we have a nuclear war, folks, nothing
It's
matters.
over anyway.
Yeah,
It's over, right? It's over. The worst thing that can happen for most people is they survive the damn thing.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not a Cassandra. I'm not somebody. I'm not. What's the name of that? The crying. I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of those people who goes around saying the world's going to end. The world's going to end. No, not at all. I'm actually somewhat ridiculously optimistic. The point is that it is what it is. Okay. It's like, the people that live underneath Mount Vesuvius had plenty of indications that this thing was a little tricky. There were earthquakes, there was the odd eruption, and, it was like, but they stayed there anyway. Okay. I don't suggest that you do that.
Agreed.
Right. When you get in the indication like the damn thing's about to erupt and take everything with it, you probably want to take some action. That's what we're faced with now.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably want to get the fuck out of there.
Well,
because
we don't have that luxury of leaving. They did.
No.
They could have moved, but they
no,
didn't.
I agree. And that's the thing is we have this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful planet, and we've been given paradise. Geographically, and I mean, just look across just our country specifically, how the range of beauty from mountains to pastures to deserts. We've been given a gift with this planet, and we need to protect it at all costs, because I think it is in itself an organism, and I think the ETs understand that as well. And what we've been doing to the planet is of grave consequence. And we may not face those problems today, but our kids are going to surely face those problems.
It's not going to get better, but let me modify that just a little bit, if I may. The planet was going to be here, and it's cool. The gift isn't the planet. The gift we were given was sentience.
Yeah.
Okay, sentience, because only with sentience are we able to appreciate how beautiful it is. I don't know if the dolphins and the elephants can appreciate its beauty. I think
I agree.
We appreciate it, but we're even more than that. We can look to the edge of the known universe. We are looking to the edge of the known universe. We can see it. We can actually understand it. That's how advanced we are. That's how extraordinary we are. And okay, that it took billions of years to get to this point. So this sentience has given us this gift, a gift that allows us to see to the edge of the universe and see the beauty of this world, but also build nuclear weapons and use them. That's where we are. And the question is, what happens next? All right. And one of the things, and maybe that's a good way to end the show tonight, since we've gone on for 7 hours, is this. And I think people will resonate with this. I live at a time when I know how big the known universe is, and not only do I know how big the known universe is, I know there's a good chance it's way bigger than that. Okay, but the known is pretty big. How many trillions upon trillions of stars, how many trillions upon quintillions of galaxies, and so forth. It's 28 billion light years across. I actually know that. You see how large that is? I mean, in the context of that I actually know, because frogs don't know that. Dogs don't know. That's why they're so happy, right? There's a lot of things dogs don't know. That's why they're so damn happy. I know this. And it would be so easy to feel so tiny. How irrelevant is a single person literally on this planet, let alone in the context of a galaxy or a universe of galaxies? And so it'd be easy to feel pretty small and almost irrelevant and like, what the hell? Let's turn it around. what's really cool about it is not how big it is versus how small we are. What's cool about it, as small as we are, we actually know it. We know it. We know how big it is. We can see it, right? Right? That's the gift of sentience. That's why being alive is so wonderful. As big as this universe is, my God, we've actually seen pretty much and figured out how big it is. And it took billions of years to get to that point.
And it's expanding.
And it's still expanding. And so
still
given
expanding.
that is what we must preserve. That is why sentient, I think, is so critical. That's why they care. These ETs give a damn at all about our choices here. And that's why they're engaging us the way they are. That's why we're headed for this paradigm shift at this point. Is it guaranteed? I don't know. But is it important? Yes. And is it explainable? I think so. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to explain it that way. I risk the possibility that my entire premises are wrong. And very soon I'm going to find out you had it completely wrong, Steve. I retire quietly. Florida. I'll go to Florida. I hear it's really cool there. I'm wrong. I want to apologize. I say, hey, I was wrong. I'm so sorry. But the thing is, I got a feeling I'm right. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The thing is I think we know you're not wrong. It's just some of the details might be off. Like, are they actually extraterrestrial? Are they from an interplanetary system or multidimensional? Like, those little details might be off, but there is something that is clearly buzzing in our skies, in our atmosphere, and in our solar system. There's no doubt about it. And there's there's clearly some sort of cover up from the government, and they know more than they know, or they know more than they say. And I think you're spot on in what you say. It just maybe some of the details are off.
Of course. Look, the point is that
you'll be vindicated, and I think you'll be.
Presence is confirmed wherever they're from. Okay, and their technology level is confirmed. All right. Their actions after 75 years of attention in the modern world. Okay. We know in the ancient world, they left little things here and there and a bunch of rocks here and whatever and everything, indicating there might have been ETs here. I love that. That's great. That's not where we're at. Okay. So their presence is here. Their level of tech is certain. Much of their actions is known. We have 75 years of a history of their activity in the public space. It's not trivial. And that's not even getting into the contact. Right, I'm talking about just the non-contact activities. We have a lot to think about, and then once you get into the contactees, and there have been hundreds of thousands, there have been millions, but there's been hundreds of thousands that have written up their accounts and provided them to researchers. A lot of people don't know that, right? Hundreds of thousands of accounts from contactees privately submitted to researchers in various forms, written, email, whatever, sitting in their files right now. And these accounts have some very substantial consistencies that, when looked at appropriately, do seem to provide clear, relevant information. Putting all of that aside, right, we've got plenty. When you add that in, and I'm willing to do that privately. In other words, a lot of what I talk about includes what I've learned from contactee reports, but I don't shove it out in front. I put it over here to help shape my thinking. So a lot of what I'm saying now is not just me reading the newspaper. It is also factoring what ETs are being told. Shown, right? Not one or two, thousands of them. And I actually consider that credible evidence. So
of course,
it's a data point.
It's a very big data point. And it would be wonderful if they were allowed on the stage. It would be wonderful if they could be brought in to provide context. But the simple truth is, that is so much messier, so much more complicated. To try to use that as a part of the discovery process, and the political discovery process,
it just wouldn't work.
Unrealistic. But in the post-disclosure world, when they can come forward comfortably, when they can be talked to openly, and when there's an opportunity to vet, you're going to see in the post-disclosure world a coalescence of ET and contact information that will be very important, very meaningful. You will see contactees in great numbers coming together in a political way to exert influence. Contact lobbyists are going to become a thing.
Yeah.
In other words, hear us. We're not
Imagine
part of chance here, all right?
And if contact happens, like legitimate contact, after disclosure, then the beings themselves might explain why they did or why people were,
Sure.
that we might not even have to explain it. They might explain it themselves. And
if there's open contact, they're going to be asked.
Yeah,
and if they've
clearly
already told the government, we're going to learn it. But
Yeah,
one way or
exactly.
another, we're going to find out. They're not going to go through all this effort and then go, okay, bye, and go away. No. So
Right.
I think we will find it out. So again, the contact thing is something that really, well, I started out in this field volunteering for John Mack. My first contact, a formal way with this field, was being in Cambridge, where his people were working with contactees, right? At the Harvard, near the Harvard,
Yeah,
hospital.
that's that's a 7-minute drive from my house.
Right.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
you
So
have
you know
you
what I'm
have
talking about.
abduction
You know
right
that
next to
area.
you on your desk.
Yeah. So
Very close.
post-disclosure, the contactees are going to be incredibly significant, because once the confirmation is out there worldwide, yeah, they're here, they're real, okay? What's the first thing a lot of people are going to want to do? They're going to want to go, did you say that your cousin Maud was a contactee? Did you say that?
Yeah,
That's it right there.
Call
Right
her,
there.
and
Changes
ask her
everything.
over for dinner.
And all of a
invite her for
sudden,
dinner. Everybody's going to want to talk to a contactee.
and
And everybody's going to, a lot of people are going to pretend they're contactees. Oh yeah, I'm a contactee.
That's going to be an issue moving
yeah,
forward.
and
Of course.
That's all right. That's all
all
right.
of a sudden things are going to flip, where guys like us are going to be asked questions from general people about how to handle this, like how to ask your, because they're going to be people that struggle with it and look for answers, and ufologists are going to be in a good place once disclosure happens. Is all
Brings
I
me
can
to a
say.
promo alert. Are you ready for a promo alert?
Do it.
Yeah.
Promo alert.
And then we can wrap up.
Yeah. One of the core aspects of the mission statement of this project that I'm involved in, which will be announced soon,
We're salivating for
is
it.
to put serious effort and resources behind making damn sure that all of the researchers and activists and journalists and documentarists that carried the water decade after decade, right? Some gone, some still with us, during that period when the government said, what ETs? What are you talking about? That those people not only are not forgotten, but they're going to have the greatest role possible engaging this issue in the post-disclosure world, and not shoved aside by a bunch of big organizations and or rich people to go, hey, we got it now. Thanks so much. You were right, but when it wasn't acceptable to be right, you were saying that, so you were crazy back then. You're crazy now. That's one of the mission statements. Little promo, all right? Little tease.
I love it.
Right. And Steve, just while we have you up on the center stage, we're so happy that you took this time tonight to talk to us. Where can people continue to find you and interact with you and keep tabs on what you're doing?
Go to paradigmresearchgroup.org and please subscribe to my update list. It's about 15,000. I like to get it to 50,000.
I'll include that in the description below as well.
I mean, there's several places on the front page of the site to subscribe. One is at the top, one's in the. So subscribe to the update list. 2, if you're on Twitter, follow Paradigm Research Group on Twitter, please. Retweet my post. Well, the ones about this issue. Don't retweet my somewhat weird, funny post. The ones about this, please retweet them. I need to build that following to 100,000. I am on Facebook. Paradigm Research Group has a Facebook group page.
Yes, it
has
is.
a personal page, but that's maxed out at 5,000. Feel free to join Paradigm Research Group or pages or the Exopolitics World Network. Okay, that's fine. Eventually, we may creep into Instagram and TikTok.
I think you should.
Hold off for there because that's really dangerous. It's really
Maybe
you know
Especially
you got to know what
TikTok.
you're doing to go
Yeah,
there.
Yeah,
TikTok can wait.
maybe not TikTok because
I don't
it's
know.
TikTok.
I don't know. I've seen some pretty heavy hitters have gone there. Whatever.
Yeah,
But
sure.
look, Twitter is a powerful tool to drive the political process. We know that. We've seen it. It's happening all the time. It is as good as we're going to get in terms of being able to bring millions of people together. Okay.
Yes,
There are
agree.
people on Twitter with 50 million followers.
Incredible.
I mean, look, 100,000 would be a massive tool for us. So follow on Twitter, and that's pretty much it. My contact information is on the website, the email and address and all that stuff. So get in touch. Things are about to get going here, and I'm trying to get as many people involved in the work that we're doing, and so thank you for that.
Yeah,
and if you have a podcast or a show, or if you're at CNN or MSNBC or Fox, my number, it's on the site. Call me. Believe me, I live to get in front of a microphone.
I'm saying that's what I'm saying.
We'd love to hear it.
And we would love to not only have you back, but we would love to help in this endeavor that you're about to begin. And I think like you said, just hearing you say it's bigger than that 2013 event is that just gets my mouth my mouth watering for what it is.
By the way, that image, that thing that you showed to me a couple of times, was created by the host here. Yes.
Yeah, I made that, and
okay.
and I watched your profile picture on Twitter for a little bit, which let me just say I was honored to have you do that. That was actually mind blowing to me.
Thomas has done this for quite a few people in the field. Just did it gratis.
Yeah.
Yes. He is using some of the new AI graphic creation technology, which is eventually going to put all the artists in the world out of work. And then he's doing some working with that using Adobe and so forth to create some really cool renditions, and this was mine. I got to tell you, I love it.
Thank you.
And I put it up as a profile for a while, but then, I've switched it out again. But I hope you'll continue to do that for others in the field, because this is the kind of thing that gives them the recognition that they deserve.
Yeah.
And I hope that you create maybe a whole platform where you have all of them in one place.
Yeah, do like a montage of them all.
Love to do that.
Like a collage.
Create a website specifically for this work. I think this is very important. And so, it's really good. So thank you for that. And
you're welcome.
I've sent you a couple of suggestions, but I know that every single person in this field, including some contactees, who see one of those creations that you do of them, they're going to love it. They're going to love it, because this is not an easy path, my friend. This is a tough road to walk.
It is.
And thanks to people like yourself and others, the people that run the conferences and everything else that have given us the platforms and allowed the community to build. Hey, it helps. And it's another reason why we're about to win.
We are about to win.
Sure feels that way.
We are about to win.
Ready to win.
I love that final message. We are about to
We're about to win. There you go, Ty. You've been looking for a way to end your shows all the time. That's it. That's it right there.
Boom. Steve,
guys. Total disclosure, I am totally gone.
Totally. We'll
Thanks for being here with us, Steve.
All right, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
So just to debrief a little bit, because I do have a call at what time is it? Oh, I have a call in 2 minutes. So as a little debrief, with Steven, it's funny because not only I much like Dr. Greer, Steven can talk.
Yeah.
Right?
But I like listening to Bassett talk.
Right.
He's like he has me captivated, honestly. Like he knows what he's talking about, and you can tell he's passionate about it, which is why I feel the way that we did what we did tonight was perfect as far as giving him the floor.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what you should do.
He's earned it.
And he's earned, like I said to him earlier, that was not just for everyone listening, that was not me coursing him into retirement. That was me saying he's done enough work in this field where he's earned a seat at the table. Like,
I totally agree with that.
right. And with that being said, guys, I want to say this. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, and Tom, thank you for pointing out a little bit of a mistake that was in our description. So, I fixed that, or it is being fixed.
Zio spotted it. You may remember my buddy.
Yeah.
He relayed that to me, and I was like, "Oh, dude, I got to text Ty real quick."
Yeah. Thank you for catching that little mistake, because when we went through the name change for the show, some of the links changed, and I didn't realize it until people start. You guys are pointing it out. But if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or listening and or watching on Spotify, please rate and review the show. It helps so tremendously much that you have no idea, and it's free. It's absolutely free to show your support by rating and reviewing the show, as well as obviously following and subscribing to the YouTube channel. If you want to help support the channel further, become a member. You'll get early access to videos like we did tonight, and so much, a yearly gift. And once we reach a certain amount of members, we'll do members only live streams, little updates, breaking news shows, those kind of things. So it's going to be really fun. The future is the future. Oh God, I just went through puberty. Did you hear that? God damn.
That was quick, huh?
Yeah. God. Oh, Lord.
You had it easy, Ty.
Yeah.
It only lasted a couple seconds.
Woo! But yeah, if you want to support the channel further, everything goes back into the production of the show and to other projects that we're working on. Trust me, guys, we want this to be top-notch quality show. Every single time that you listen, we want you to be able to take away something from it, whether that's educational or entertainment, or anything like that. We truly love you guys as the viewers and the listeners, because there'd be no show without you. So from the bottom of my heart, and again, I think, Tom, you share the same sentiment.
We love you.
We love you guys, and we'll see you next time. Shit, God damn it, yep. Tom, where can they find you?
Oh, of course, Atomic Thomas on Twitter. Just change the O's to zeros. You can find me as Cortex Zero on YouTube. I have a lot of new stuff coming out that I'm working on in the background, and of course, my small business that I owned, ZeroDigitalDesigns.com. That's where I'm at. You can find me. I'm very active on Twitter and on YouTube, and I hope to see you guys over on that side of things as well.
All right, guys, and with that being said, that is all the time we have for you tonight. We look forward to being back again. Now, we do have a show coming up this week. I cannot tell you who it is yet, but let's just say this. He was on the Nimitz ship when the encounter took place. Now, it is going to be an amazing show, and it is partially going to be used in the film. And I have another guest that I will be able to announce in the next couple weeks, who did some work with the Nimitz case as well. So lots in store. And then we're rounding out our guest list for February. So guys, it's truly been an honor for tonight. This is a show that was a long one in the making. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. We're about to win, baby.